Let us travel back to the glorious height of the Roman Empire, an era of unmatched dominance and splendor. This was the age of mighty emperors, fearless gladiators, and brilliant philosophers. At its greatest expanse, the Roman Empire's territories stretched from the misty British Isles in the frigid north to the scorching African deserts in the south, and from the Iberian Peninsula's rugged coasts in the west to Mesopotamia's fertile crescent in the east. This colossal empire became a melting pot where countless cultures, languages, and traditions blended seamlessly under the watchful gaze of the Roman eagle. It was a paradoxical time of both extravagant wealth and moral decay, of groundbreaking innovations and relentless conquests, of cultural renaissance and intellectual enlightenment that would forever shape human history. Picture imperial Rome in its prime, the pulsating heart of this vast empire, throbbing with relentless energy and activity. The city's magnificence, evident in its soaring monuments, expansive public squares, and opulent villas, stood as undeniable proof of the empire's strength and prosperity. Rome was a city of striking contrasts, where majestic temples and lavish palaces coexisted with overcrowded tenements and chaotic marketplaces. Its streets buzzed constantly with merchants hawking wares, children at play, and the never-ending murmur of human interaction. Yet amidst this urban frenzy, tranquil oases existed, peaceful gardens and serene public baths offering respite from the city's relentless pace. Roman society mirrored this diversity. The privileged patricians, wealthy aristocrats holding high offices and wielding tremendous political influence, resided in magnificent villas decorated with intricate mosaics and frescoes, surrounded by lush gardens and attended by numerous slaves. Their days revolved around political scheming, public obligations, and extravagant feasts. Beneath them labored the plebeians, Rome's common citizens who formed the backbone of society as farmers, traders, craftsmen, and laborers. Though of lower status, they maintained their own political institutions and were absolutely vital to the empire's functioning. Life in Rome wasn't solely about power struggles. It overflowed with cultural and intellectual richness. The Romans greatly admired Greek culture and learning, with many of their greatest thinkers and artists deeply influenced by Hellenic ideas. Philosophy, literature, and arts thrived under imperial and elite patronage. Works by poets like Virgil and Horace, and philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius remain revered to this day. Yet Roman life also knew hardship and struggle. Governing such a vast, culturally diverse empire proved enormously challenging, with frequent rebellions in distant provinces. Slavery was widespread and often brutal. The chasm between rich and poor was staggering, with little social mobility. Despite these challenges, Rome maintained remarkable stability for centuries, a testament to its administrative brilliance and military might. But Roman life wasn't all grim survival. It celebrated joy and spectacle. The empire became legendary for its games and public entertainments. The Colosseum, the empire's grandest amphitheater, hosted thrilling gladiator battles and exotic beast hunts. The massive Circus Maximus drew tens of thousands for its exhilarating chariot races. These spectacles, frequently sponsored by emperors and wealthy citizens, served not just as entertainment, but as tools for social control and promoting Roman values. Religion permeated every aspect of Roman existence. Their polytheistic faith worshipped a pantheon of deities, believing in Rome's divine origins and performing elaborate rituals to secure divine favor. Over time, Roman religion absorbed elements from conquered cultures, creating a remarkably diverse spiritual landscape. As we explore deeper into Roman life, we'll examine its complex social hierarchy, political machinations, intellectual pursuits, and the daily struggles and joys of those living under the Roman eagle's shadow. We'll also investigate the factors behind Rome's eventual decline and its enduring legacy. The Roman Empire wasn't merely a political entity. It was a vibrant, multifaceted civilization, a crucible of cultures and ideas that fundamentally shaped human history. From the patricians' opulent villas to plebeians' modest dwellings, from intellectual salons to bustling markets, from Colosseum spectacles to public baths tranquility, Rome was a world of stark contrasts: power and struggle, culture and learning, human aspiration and achievement. From their architectural marvels to their social structures, the Romans crafted a civilization that continues to influence our world today. Let us now step into the intricate urban planning and infrastructure that formed the backbone of Rome's prosperity. The Romans were master architects and engineers, designing cities with remarkable efficiency, advanced materials, and a keen eye for both practicality and luxury. At the core of every Roman city stood the Forum, a grand public square that served as the political, economic, and social heart of the metropolis. Government buildings, temples, and bustling markets surrounded this central hub, where citizens gathered to debate politics, strike business deals, or simply mingle. Larger cities like Rome itself boasted multiple forums, each with its own distinct character and purpose. The grandeur of Roman cities was epitomized by their monumental structures. The Colosseum, an engineering marvel capable of seating 50,000 spectators, hosted gladiatorial battles, mock naval clashes, and wild beast hunts. Yet even smaller towns had their own amphitheaters, though on a more modest scale. The Romans also excelled in urban organization, employing a grid system for their roads. The two main thoroughfares, the Cardo, north-south, and Decumanus, east-west, intersected at the city center, dividing it into orderly blocks. Streets bustled with shops and stalls, creating a lively, almost chaotic energy. Yet beneath the surface, everything was meticulously planned. But Rome's brilliance extended beyond city layouts. Their infrastructure was revolutionary. Aqueducts, a testament to Roman ingenuity, channeled fresh water from distant sources into urban centers using nothing but gravity. These towering stone channels supplied public baths, fountains, and private homes, ensuring hygiene and comfort. Some aqueducts remain functional even today, a lasting tribute to Roman foresight. Equally impressive was Rome's sewer system, the Cloaca Maxima, an underground network that carried waste and stormwater away from the city, drastically improving sanitation and reducing disease. Roman housing reflected social stratification. The wealthy lived in domus, spacious private residences with central courtyards, intricate mosaics, and sometimes even private baths. These homes often doubled as workplaces, with shops or offices attached. Meanwhile, the lower classes crowded into insulated, multi-story apartment buildings that were often poorly constructed, prone to fires, and lacking basic amenities. Public baths, thermae, were more than just places to wash. They were social hubs. Grand complexes like the baths of Caracalla featured hot and cold pools, steam rooms, gymnasiums, and even libraries. Here, Romans of all classes mingled, exercising, debating philosophy, or simply relaxing. The baths embodied Rome's understanding of urban living, a balance of cleanliness, leisure, and community. From their meticulously planned streets to their revolutionary water systems, the Romans demonstrated an unparalleled grasp of urban development. Their cities were not just functional, they were designed for living well. Now let us immerse ourselves in the daily rhythms of Rome, the empire's throbbing heart, where over 1 million souls from across the known world converged. As dawn's first light crept over the 7 hills, the city stirred to life with a symphony of sounds. The metallic clang of blacksmiths' hammers, the rhythmic calls of street vendors, and the creaking wheels of carts laden with goods from distant provinces. The air carried mingling scents of baking bread, smoked fish, and the ever-present tang of wine. The Roman day followed a familiar yet fluid structure. Wealthy patricians began with a light breakfast of bread, cheese, and watered wine before holding morning salutations where clients paid respects to their patrons, a ritual reinforcing Rome's intricate social web. Meanwhile, plebeians hurried to workshops, docks, or construction sites, their calloused hands shaping the empire's physical backbone. By midday, the city reached its frenetic peak. The Forum Romanum buzzed with senators debating state affairs, merchants haggling over Egyptian grain shipments, and lawyers pleading cases before the rostra. Nearby, the aroma of sizzling sausages drifted from Thermopolia, where workers grabbed quick lunches between shifts. The wealthy retired to shaded courtyards for leisurely meals featuring dormice, glazed in honey or oysters shipped fresh from Brundisium. As afternoon shadows lengthened, Romans of all classes flocked to the baths. Here, beneath vaulted ceilings echoing with laughter and gossip, social barriers temporarily dissolved. Senators rubbed shoulders with freedmen in steam rooms, while philosophers debated in adjoining libraries. The bath's ritual progression, from tepidarium to caldarium to frigidarium, cleansed both body and spirit. Evenings brought entertainment and excess. While commoners gathered in smoky taverns playing dice games, the elite hosted extravagant cena feasts lasting hours. Guests reclined on couches as slaves presented course after course. Flamingo tongues, stuffed sow's udders, peacock brains, all seasoned with that ubiquitous Roman taste, garum. Between courses, acrobats performed or poets recited verses celebrating their patron's generosity. Yet beneath this vibrant surface festered stark inequalities. While the wealthy slept in villas cooled by fountain breezes, the poor crowded into rickety insulae, where chamber pots emptied into streets below. The empire's grandeur was built on the backs of slaves, some educated Greek tutors, others broken miners coughing blood in Spanish silver pits. This was Rome in its prime, a place where marble monuments gleamed beside open sewers, where philosophical enlightenment coexisted with brutal arena spectacles, where a baker's son could rise to senator, yet most died where they were born. A civilization of breathtaking contradictions that still echoes through our laws, languages, and dreams. Let us now examine the complex social hierarchy that structured Roman life, a rigid yet surprisingly fluid system that determined one's destiny from birth. At the pinnacle stood the patricians, Rome's aristocratic elite whose bloodlines traced back to the city's mythical founders. These privileged few inhabited sprawling villas on the Palatine Hill, their walls adorned with frescoes depicting heroic ancestors. A patrician's day revolved around political maneuvering in the Senate, managing vast agricultural estates, and hosting lavish dinner parties where exotic delicacies like stuffed dormice and flamingo tongues showcased their wealth. Beneath them flourished the equestrians, Rome's entrepreneurial class. Originally cavalry officers, they evolved into wealthy businessmen, tax collectors, and imperial administrators. An equestrian might own shipping fleets transporting Egyptian grain or silver mines in Hispania, his fortune rivaling senators yet barred from the highest offices. Their distinctive narrow purple stripe on tunics marked this ambitious class, always negotiating the delicate balance between wealth and political influence. The plebeians formed Rome's backbone, shopkeepers, craftsmen, and laborers whose collective power had forced political concessions centuries earlier. A successful plebeian baker might own several insulae apartments, while his poorer brethren crowded into single rooms above their workshops. Though they could vote in assemblies, real power remained elusive without patrician connections. At society's margins existed two paradoxical groups, slaves and freedmen. Slavery was the empire's dark engine, from educated Greek tutors to chain gangs in North African olive presses. Yet manumission offered hope. A freed slave gained limited citizenship, often continuing to work for former masters as clients. Some amassed astonishing wealth, like the fictional Trimalchio, their tombs ostentatiously proclaiming risen status. Roman women occupied a unique space, legally subordinate, yet wielding considerable influence. While barred from voting or public office, elite women like Cornelia, mother of the Gracchi, or Agrippina shaped politics through family networks. A matron managed households with dozens of slaves, her stola and intricate hairstyles signaling respectability. Lower-class women worked as midwives, shopkeepers, or even gladiators. The poet Juvenal sneered at upper-class women who trained like men at gymnasiums. Social mobility, though rare, wasn't impossible. A gifted slave might gain freedom and wealth through business. Soldiers could earn citizenship after 25 years' service. The Emperor Pertinax rose from slave son to throne briefly. Yet most Romans died in the class they were born, their lives circumscribed by ancient traditions. This intricate hierarchy pulsed with tension between old money and new, citizens and foreigners, tradition and change. The poet Horace, son of a freedman, captured this duality. Captive Greece took captive her savage conqueror. Rome's genius lay in absorbing outsiders while maintaining social order, creating stability that lasted centuries even as it sowed seeds of eventual decline. The military machine that forged and sustained the Roman Empire stood as one of history's most formidable fighting forces. Picture a legion on the march, 5,000 men moving in perfect synchronization, their hobnailed sandals kicking up dust on stone-paved roads that spiderwebbed across 3 continents. Each soldier carried 60 pounds of equipment: the rectangular scutum shield, pilum javelins designed to bend on impact, and the deadly gladius short sword that had conquered nations. Their segmented armor, the larica segmentata, clanked rhythmically as they advanced, a sound that struck terror into Rome's enemies. The legions were more than just warriors. They were Rome's ultimate multi-tool. Between campaigns, these soldier engineers built fortifications, roads, and bridges with precision that still awes modern engineers. A legion could construct a fortified camp complete with ditches, palisades, and gates in mere hours, whether in German forests or Syrian deserts. Their network of roads, stretching over 250,000 miles at the empire's peak, bound distant provinces to Rome with bands of stone and mortar. Military service offered rare social mobility. A peasant's son who enlisted at 18 could rise through the ranks to become a centurion, his vine-rod staff of office symbolizing hard-won authority. After 25 years of service, veterans received land grants and citizenship, their discharge papers, diplomata, guaranteeing rights that transformed their families' futures. Some exceptional soldiers even entered the equestrian class, trading sword for toga. The navy, though less glamorous than the legions, played a crucial role. Roman galleys patrolled the Mediterranean, keeping shipping lanes safe from pirates. At the Battle of Actium, Octavian's fleet had secured the empire itself. Naval bases like Misenum near Naples housed Marines who doubled as firefighters for Rome's flammable insulae. Rome's military adapted constantly, adopting superior enemy tactics and weapons. After disastrous encounters with Parthian horse archers, they incorporated cavalry units. From the Celts, they adopted chainmail. From the Spaniards, their lethal short sword. This pragmatism, combined with relentless discipline, created an army that could crush rebellions in Britain one year and defend the Euphrates frontier the next. Yet this mighty force had vulnerabilities. As the empire grew, defending borders stretched legions dangerously thin. The 3rd century crisis would expose these weaknesses when emperors had to buy off barbarians rather than defeat them. But during Rome's golden age, the sight of eagle standards approaching meant certain victory, or certain death for those foolish enough to resist. The military's legacy endures. Modern armies still use Roman tactics and terminology. The U.S. Marine Corps' eagle, globe, and anchor emblem consciously echoes the legionary standards. From basic training to divide and conquer strategies, Rome's martial genius still shapes how nations wage war. Let us now explore the vibrant cultural and intellectual landscape that flourished under Roman rule, where Greek philosophy met pragmatic Roman thought to create an enduring intellectual legacy. Imagine the private libraries of wealthy patricians, their cedarwood shelves heavy with scrolls of Homer's epics alongside Cicero's political treatises. Educated slaves from Greece, known as pedagogues, tutored aristocratic children in both Latin and Greek, creating a bilingual elite who could quote Euripides as readily as Virgil. The Roman education system progressed through distinct stages. Young boys, and some privileged girls, began with the literator, learning reading, writing, and basic arithmetic on wax tablets. At 12, they advanced to the grammaticus, where they analyzed classical texts line by line. The most promising students then studied rhetoric under a reader, mastering the art of persuasive speech through elaborate exercises. In the schools of declamation, future senators practiced defending fictional cases, should a raped Vestal virgin be buried alive, honing skills for law courts and political debates. Philosophy flourished in imperial Rome, though with practical Roman adaptations. Stoicism, particularly through Seneca and Emperor Marcus Aurelius, became the dominant philosophy of the elite. Unlike abstract Greek schools, Roman Stoicism emphasized duty, self-control, and resilience, virtues that served politicians and soldiers alike. Epictetus, the slave-turned-philosopher, taught that while we can't control external events, we can control our reactions, a lesson that resonated in Rome's turbulent politics. Literature reached new heights during Augustus' reign, the so-called Golden Age. Virgil's Aeneid consciously crafted a national epic to rival Homer, while Ovid's playful metamorphoses wove Greek myths into a distinctly Roman tapestry. Historians like Livy and Tacitus grappled with Rome's past and present, their works alternating between patriotic celebration and cynical critique of power's corruptions. The visual arts combined Greek aesthetics with Roman innovation. Wealthy homes displayed marble copies of Greek statues alongside original portrait busts that valued realism over idealism, wrinkles, scars, and all. Frescoes in Pompeii's villas reveal a fascination with optical illusions and perspective, while mosaics like the unswept floor depicted discarded food with trompe-l'oeil realism. Science and engineering flourished under imperial patronage. Frontinus wrote definitive works on aqueducts, while Pliny the Elder's natural history attempted to catalog all known knowledge with mixed accuracy. Galen revolutionized medicine through animal dissections, though his mistaken theories would dominate European medicine for centuries. Yet this intellectual golden age had limitations. Most women received only domestic education, though exceptions like the poet Sulpicia proved their capabilities. The lower classes remained largely illiterate, their knowledge passed orally. And as the empire Christianized, some pagan works were actively suppressed, though monks would paradoxically preserve them through medieval copying. Rome's cultural legacy is perhaps most visible in our languages. The Romance languages, Italian, French, Spanish, evolved from Vulgar Latin, while English derives 60% of its vocabulary from Latin roots. Legal terms like habeas corpus, scientific classifications, even the abbreviations e.g. and i.e. all testify to Rome's enduring intellectual imprint. As we walk through modern cities with their grid layouts, public libraries, and monumental architecture, we still walk in Rome's shadow. The economic engine that powered the Roman Empire combined agricultural might, vast trade networks, and an unprecedented reliance on slave labor in a system both sophisticated and brutal. Picture the latifundia, sprawling estates stretching across Italian and provincial landscapes, where endless rows of olive trees and grapevines swayed under the Mediterranean sun. Wealthy senators owned dozens of these plantations, worked by chained slave gangs whose lives were measured in harvest yields. Yet small peasant farms still dotted the countryside, their owners struggling to compete with slave-driven economies of scale. Trade routes pulsed like arteries across the empire, carrying goods that fed Rome's insatiable appetite. Egyptian grain ships, their holds bursting with wheat, sailed the bread route to Ostia, where measurements in the Horea granaries determined whether Rome would feast or riot. Spanish olive oil amphorae stacked like cordwood in Monte Testaccio created an artificial hill that still stands today. Syrian glassware, British tin, African ivory, and Indian spices all flowed through bustling emporiums where customs taxes filled imperial coffers. The Roman monetary system created unprecedented economic integration. Golden aureae bearing emperors' profiles circulated from Scotland to Sudan, their value remarkably stable for centuries. Banking houses like those in the Forum offered loans, currency exchange, and even primitive checks. Pompeii's walls still bear election notices painted by professional sign makers, proof of a thriving commercial advertising industry. Manufacturing flourished in specialized centers. Aretine pottery from Italy, its red gloss surface stamped with maker's marks, graced tables from Germania to Parthia. Spanish mines disgorged rivers of silver that paid legions and fueled inflation simultaneously. The arms factory at Augusta Treverorum, modern Trier, could outfit entire armies with standardized armor and weapons. Yet this economic miracle rested on fragile foundations. Over-reliance on slave labor discouraged technological innovation. Why invent machines when human muscle was cheap? The grain dole, while preventing unrest, created a dependent urban proletariat. When plagues decimated the slave population in the 2nd century, the system began unraveling. Inflation spiraled as emperors debased coins to pay mounting expenses, until Diocletian's edict on maximum prices attempted, and failed, to fix costs by imperial decree. The Roman economy's legacy persists in surprising ways. Modern shipping still uses container-like amphory principles. Our bread and circuses' welfare systems echo Roman grain doles. Even today's globalized trade networks mirror Rome's interconnected markets. Yet perhaps the most enduring lesson is the peril of building prosperity on unsustainable foundations, a warning as relevant now as during Rome's decline. The religious landscape of imperial Rome formed a complex tapestry where ancient traditions blended with foreign cults in a constantly evolving spiritual marketplace. Jupiter Optimus Maximus still reigned supreme atop the Capitoline Hill, his temple gleaming with gold leaf, but the streets below teemed with devotees of exotic Eastern deities. Imagine the rhythmic clashing of cymbals as priests of Cybele paraded through the Subura, their self-castrated Galli priests wearing colorful robes and elaborate headdresses. In dimly lit Mithraea, soldiers whispered secret initiation rites beneath frescoes depicting the god slaying the cosmic bull. Along the Tiber, Egyptian Isis worshippers anointed statues with Nile water, their linen robes rustling as they performed intricate rituals. Roman religion was fundamentally contractual, a system of do ut da, I give so that you may give, where precise rituals maintained the pax deorum, peace with the gods. Augurs studied bird flights before battles, haruspices examined sheep livers for omens, and Vestal virgins guarded the sacred flame whose continuity ensured Rome's survival. The College of Pontiffs maintained an intricate religious calendar where festivals like the Lupercalia, with its naked runners and fertility rites, coexisted with solemn state ceremonies. The imperial cult added a new dimension, transforming deceased emperors into divi, divine beings. In provincial temples, citizens swore oaths before statues of Augustus clad in Jupiter's attributes. This ingenious system bound diverse subjects to Rome through shared veneration, though Jews and early Christians faced persecution for refusing participation. Mystery religions offered personal salvation absent in state rituals. Eleusinian initiates drank the Kickian potion promising rebirth, while Dionysian devotees experienced ecstatic liberation through wine and dance. The cult of Sol Invictus, unconquered sun, gained such popularity that it nearly became Rome's dominant religion before Christianity's rise. This spiritual ferment produced remarkable tolerance, until it didn't. While Rome traditionally absorbed foreign gods, even constructing a temple to the unknown god, monotheistic Christianity's exclusivity provoked violent reactions. Nero famously scapegoated Christians for the Great Fire, having them burned as human torches. Yet within 3 centuries, the persecuted would become the persecutors, as Christianity triumphed at the Milvian Bridge. The religious legacy endures in unexpected ways. Our calendar retains Roman month names and pagan festivals repurposed as Christian holidays. The Vatican obelisk once stood in Nero's circus. Even the word religion itself comes from the Latin religare, to bind together, a fitting description of how Roman spirituality both united and divided an empire. The twilight of Rome's golden age crept in gradually, like shadows lengthening across the forum at dusk. What began as isolated cracks in the empire's foundations, a rebellion here, a border skirmish there, slowly widened into chasms that would swallow the Western Empire whole. Imagine the confusion in Rome's streets when news arrived in 251 CE that Emperor Decius had fallen to Gothic spears at Abertus, the first Roman ruler killed by barbarians in battle. The unthinkable was becoming routine. The 3rd century unleashed a perfect storm of crises. Plague swept through cities like a scythe, with the Antonine and Cyprian outbreaks killing millions. Inflation spiraled as emperors debased silver coins until they contained more copper than precious metal, a monetary death spiral preserved in hoards archaeologists still uncover today. The army, once Rome's stabilizer, became its kingmaker, with barracks emperors rising and falling like actors in some bloody farce. Between 235 to 284 CE, over 20 emperors claimed the purple, most meeting violent ends. Barbarian pressures intensified as new confederations emerged beyond the frontiers. The Goths, a Germanic people displaced by Hunnic migrations, crushed Emperor Valens at Adrianople in 378, a disaster that revealed Rome's military vulnerability. Meanwhile, the Sassanid Persians revived ancient Achaemenid ambitions, capturing Emperor Valerian in 260 and allegedly using his skin as a trophy. Diocletian's reforms, 284 to 305, temporarily staunched the bleeding through radical restructuring. The empire divided administratively, with co-emperors, Augusti, and their junior partners, Caesars, ruling from new capitals like Nicomedia and Trier. His price controls and occupation requirements attempted to freeze society in place, a doomed effort to resist change through bureaucracy. Constantine's reign, 306 to 337, brought pivotal shifts. His conversion to Christianity after the Milvian Bridge Vision, 312 CE, began the empire's religious transformation. His new capital at Constantinople straddled Europe and Asia, anticipating the East's growing importance. Yet these changes couldn't prevent the inevitable. In 410, the unthinkable occurred. Rome itself fell to Alaric's Visigoths. Though the Eastern Empire would endure as Byzantium, the Western Empire fragmented into Germanic kingdoms. Modern historians debate Rome's fall endlessly. Was it military overextension, economic collapse, climate change, or internal rot? Perhaps the most poignant explanation comes from the ruins themselves. In Ostia's abandoned warehouses, in Britannia's overgrown villas, in North African cities buried by sand, we see not sudden collapse, but gradual simplification, a forgetting of how to maintain the complex systems that made Roman civilization possible. The lights didn't flicker out. They dimmed slowly until darkness seemed normal. Yet Rome's ghost still walks among us. Our laws, languages, and even the shape of our cities bear its imprint. The dream of reuniting its territories haunted rulers from Charlemagne to Napoleon. Perhaps Rome's true lesson is that no civilization, no matter how mighty, is permanent, a humbling thought as we walk through our own impermanent monuments. The Roman Empire's collapse in the West created a power vacuum that reshaped Europe's political and cultural landscape for centuries. Imagine the scene in 476 CE when Odoacer, a Germanic general, deposed the boy emperor Romulus Augustulus, ironically named after Rome's legendary founder and first emperor. Rather than executing the last Western emperor, Odoacer pensioned him off to a Campanian villa, an anticlimactic end to 5 centuries of imperial rule. The imperial regalia was sent east to Constantinople, symbolically acknowledging the Byzantine Empire as Rome's sole heir. In the ensuing decades, the old Roman world fractured into Germanic successor states. Theodoric's Ostrogoths ruled Italy from Ravenna, preserving Roman administration while building spectacular Byzantine-style churches like San Apollinaire and Nuovo. Visigothic Spain produced the innovative Liber Judiciarum law code, blending Roman and Germanic traditions. Across Gaul, Frankish kings like Clovis adopted Latin as their court language while maintaining Germanic military customs, a cultural fusion that would birth medieval France. The Eastern Roman Empire endured as Byzantium for nearly another millennium. Justinian's ambitious 6th century reconquests briefly restored Roman rule over Italy, North Africa, and southern Spain. His legal codification preserved Roman law for posterity, while the Hagia Sophia's soaring dome demonstrated Byzantine engineering prowess. Yet constant pressures from Persians, Arabs, and Slavs gradually shrank the empire to a Greek-speaking rump state centered on Constantinople. Roman infrastructure slowly decayed across the west. Aqueducts crumbled from neglect, forums became quarries for building materials, and the Via Appia stones were pried up for local use. In Britain, the Anglo-Saxon takeover was so complete that when Christian missionaries arrived in 597, they found few traces of Roman Christianity. Yet paradoxically, the Church became Rome's most enduring successor institution, preserving Latin learning in monasteries while converting barbarian kings. The transition from antiquity to the Middle Ages varied dramatically by region. In Italy, senators like Cassiodorus attempted to maintain classical traditions amidst Gothic rule. In contrast, post-Roman Britain descended into what archaeologists term the sub-Roman period, a dramatic decline in material culture where pottery wheel use and masonry construction temporarily disappeared from the archaeological record. This period of transformation birthed new hybrid societies. The Carolingian Renaissance under Charlemagne consciously revived Roman imperial imagery while creating a distinctly medieval political order. Islamic caliphates absorbed and expanded upon Roman scientific and philosophical texts, preserving them for later European rediscovery. Even the word Roman took on new meanings, describing Byzantines to Western Europeans, Greek identity to Ottoman subjects, and eventually the spiritual authority of the Holy Roman Empire. The Roman Empire's afterlife proved as consequential as its existence. Its ghost haunted medieval imaginations, inspired Renaissance humanists, and provided cautionary tales for Enlightenment philosophers. Modern nations from the United States to India still incorporate Roman legal and architectural elements, proving that while empires fall, their ideas can be endlessly reimagined and repurposed across centuries. Rome's legacy pulsates through our modern world in ways both obvious and subtle, its influence woven into the very fabric of Western civilization. Walk through any major city and you'll tread on Roman innovations. The concrete beneath your feet, the grid-patterned streets, the public parks that echo imperial forums. Our legal systems still operate on principles codified by Justinian's jurists, with concepts like innocent until proven guilty and trial by jury tracing directly to Roman courts. Even the very structure of our governments, with their checks and balances, consciously emulate Rome's republican model, though thankfully without its occasional civil wars. The Latin language, though no longer spoken, lives on in our scientific terminology, legal phrases, and everyday vocabulary. When we write etc., am/pm, ante/post meridiem, or ps, postscriptum, we're using Roman shorthand. Medical students still memorize Latin terms for body parts, while botanists classify plants with Linnaeus' Latin-based system. The Romance languages, Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Romanian, are essentially modern dialects of Vulgar Latin, their grammar and core vocabulary preserved like linguistic fossils. Roman engineering principles still shape our infrastructure. Modern aqueducts, now called water mains, follow the same gravity-fed designs. The Pantheon's unreinforced concrete dome, standing for 2,000 years, still inspires architects today. When engineers build arched bridges or layered roads, they're employing techniques perfected by Roman builders. Even our sewage systems owe their basic design to the Cloaca Maxima's pioneering example. In governance, Rome's imperial administration created the blueprint for large-scale bureaucracy. The division of nations into provinces and municipalities, the census as a tool for taxation, even the concept of standardized currency, all were refined by Roman administrators. Modern diplomats still use methods pioneered by Roman legates. While military strategists study Hannibal's campaigns, and Caesar's commentaries as foundational texts. Cultural and entertainment traditions carry Roman DNA. The Olympic Games revived an ancient tradition Rome preserved. Our spectator sports, from soccer stadiums to boxing matches, descend directly from Roman arena spectacles, minus the Mortal Kombat, thankfully. The concept of public libraries, museums, and higher education all flourished under Roman patronage before being lost and rediscovered. Perhaps most profound is Rome's psychological legacy, the idea that civilization requires active maintenance. The Roman poet Juvenal's warning about bread and circuses still resonates as a caution against political distraction. Cicero's speeches on civic duty remain relevant in political science courses. And the very word republic, residential publica, the public thing, reminds us that governance is a collective responsibility. As we navigate 21st century challenges, maintaining infrastructure, balancing security and liberty, governing diverse populations, we unconsciously walk paths first paved by Roman thinkers. Their solutions succeeded and failed in equal measure, offering us both inspiration and cautionary tales. The Roman eagle may have fallen, but its shadow still stretches across our world, a reminder that while empires rise and fall, the best ideas transcend their creators. The study of Roman history offers more than academic knowledge. It provides a mirror reflecting our own societal challenges and triumphs. Contemporary urban planners grappling with overcrowding and infrastructure decay find sobering parallels in Rome's population density and aqueduct maintenance struggles. Modern militaries confronting asymmetric warfare study how Roman legions adapted, or failed to adapt, to guerrilla tactics in Germania and Parthia. Even today's debates about immigration and cultural assimilation echo Rome's complex relationship with the barbarian tribes it both fought and gradually absorbed into its empire. Archaeological discoveries continue to revolutionize our understanding of Roman life. Recent LiDAR surveys have revealed entire lost cities beneath Mediterranean farmlands, while underwater excavations of shipwrecks provide astonishing details about ancient trade networks. Scientists analyzing lead pollution in Greenland ice cores can trace Rome's economic boom and bust through atmospheric residues from Spanish silver mines. Even the humble study of Roman sewage systems, as in Herculaneum, yields insights into public health and dietary habits that challenge our assumptions about ancient life. The digital age has transformed Roman studies. Virtual reality reconstructions now allow us to walk through a perfectly rendered forum at its peak, while AI helps decipher previously unreadable carbonized scrolls from Vesuvius victims. Online databases catalog millions of artifacts, making the material culture of Rome more accessible than ever to researchers worldwide. Yet for all our technology, key mysteries remain. The exact recipe for Roman concrete's durability, the location of Cleopatra's tomb, or what truly caused the empire's final collapse in the West. Roman history's relevance extends beyond academia. Military academies still teach Hannibal's tactics at Cannae as the perfect battle of encirclement. Economists analyze Diocletian's price control edict as an early case study in inflation management. Even climate scientists study the Roman warm period, circa 200 BCE, 150 CE, as a historical precedent for agricultural adaptation during climatic shifts. Perhaps most importantly, Rome's story reminds us that civilizations are fragile ecosystems. The same roads and trade networks that brought wealth also spread plague. The military might that created security eventually strained economic resources. The cultural openness that fostered innovation also introduced competing value systems. In an era of global pandemics, trade wars, and cultural conflicts, Rome's experiences feel uncomfortably familiar. As new generations reinterpret Roman history, our perspective continues evolving. Recent scholarship emphasizes previously marginalized voices, women, slaves, provincials, creating a more nuanced understanding of Roman society. The diversity of Rome is now recognized as one of its greatest strengths and vulnerabilities, a lesson with profound implications for our multicultural world. The excavation of Rome's past remains an ongoing excavation of our own societal foundations. Each discovery, whether a golden bracelet in a British villa or a scribbled grocery list in Pompeii, adds another piece to humanity's shared story. The Roman experience endures not as a dead civilization, but as a living conversation about power, identity, and what it means to build something lasting in an impermanent world. The living legacy of Rome manifests most powerfully in how modern nations consciously and unconsciously emulate its models while striving to avoid its failures. Contemporary architects still employ the Roman arch in bridges and stadiums, while urban designers replicate the forum concept in civic squares from London to Singapore. The U.S. Capitol's neoclassical columns and the European Parliament's Latin motto, "United in Diversity," demonstrate how political institutions still clothe themselves in Roman imagery. Even the European Union's structure of semi-autonomous nations orbiting a central authority eerily mirrors Rome's relationship with its provinces. Roman legal concepts underpin modern justice systems in unexpected ways. The principle of habeas corpus, protecting against unlawful detention, evolved directly from Roman legal protections for citizens. Modern class action lawsuits descend from Roman group litigation procedures. Even courtroom procedures, from the presentation of evidence to the role of advocates, follow patterns established in Roman basilicas turned law courts. The military sphere shows equally profound influences. The U.S. Marine Corps' Eagle Globe and Anchor emblem consciously echoes legionary standards, while military terms like centurion, company commander, and testudo, protective formation, remain in use. More disturbingly, modern counterinsurgency strategies often revisit Rome's mix of brutal repression and selective assimilation that pacified rebellious provinces. Economic historians note striking parallels between Rome's globalization and our own. The Roman equivalent of container shipping, standardized amphory, created the ancient world's first integrated markets. Rome's equivalent of financial crises, currency debasement leading to inflation, feels uncomfortably familiar to modern central bankers. The bread and circuses welfare system finds its echo in everything from farm subsidies to entertainment tax breaks. Cultural appropriation followed Roman patterns long before the term existed. Just as Rome absorbed and repackaged Greek culture, European Renaissance artists copied Roman styles, while believing they were recreating pure Greek forms. Napoleon's empire consciously mimicked Roman imagery, while Mussolini's ill-fated attempts to revive Roman glory demonstrate the dangers of such historical fetishization. The psychological impact persists in our collective imagination. From Shakespeare's Roman plays to HBO's Rome, popular culture keeps reinterpreting Roman stories. Political commentators still warn about crossing the Rubicon or reaching the Ides of March. Even our apocalyptic fantasies, from the decline and fall to dystopian films, often follow Roman models of civilized collapse. Perhaps Rome's ultimate lesson is that no civilization is eternal, but its ideas can achieve immortality. The Roman Republic fell, but its concept of citizenship endures. The legions disbanded, but their discipline informs modern armies. The pagan temples crumbled, but Roman basilicas became Christian churches. In this way, Rome teaches us that cultural survival requires both preservation and transformation, a delicate balance our own civilization must now negotiate as we create the relics of tomorrow. The Eternal City's influence extends beyond physical structures and legal systems. It has fundamentally shaped how we conceptualize time itself. Our calendar, a modified version of Julius Caesar's Julian system, still carries the names of Roman gods and emperors: January for Janus, March for Mars, July for Julius Caesar, August for Augustus. The 7-day week, adopted from Babylonian tradition via Rome, preserves the planetary names in languages like Spanish, Miracles for Mercury's Day, and French, Vendredi for Venus' Day. Even our obsession with anniversaries and centennials stems from Roman commemorative practices like the secular games. Roman linguistic constructs permeate our thought processes. The abbreviation e.g. exempli gratia and i.e. id est remain standard in academic writing worldwide. Legal documents still use Latin phrases like pro bono and subpoena, while medical terminology remains 80% Latin or Greek-based. The very way we organize knowledge, from library classification systems to scientific nomenclature, follows patterns established by Roman encyclopedists like Pliny the Elder. The Roman genius for standardization created measurement systems that endured for millennia. The mile, mil passus, 1,000 paces, originated as a Roman soldier's marching measure. Modern plumbing still uses pipe sizes based on Roman digits. The concept of standardized weights and measures spread by Roman merchants became the foundation of global trade. Today's ISO certification system is essentially a digital age version of Roman quality control stamps found on amphorae. Psychological studies suggest Roman cultural values continue influencing Western behavior patterns. The emphasis on pietas, dutiful respect, manifests in modern concepts of professionalism. The Roman virtus, manly courage, ideal still underlies military valor awards. Even our work ethic echoes the Roman emphasis on industria, diligent labor. These unconscious value transmissions may explain why Roman management techniques, like those described in Cicero's letters, remain startlingly relevant to modern businesses. The entertainment industry owes more to Rome than gladiatorial imagery. The three-act play structure perfected by Roman dramatists still dominates screenwriting. Reality TV shows mirror the public humiliation aspects of Roman comedy. Sporting events from the Olympics to the Super Bowl consciously emulate Roman spectacle building, complete with opening ceremonies and mascots. The very concept of celebrity first emerged with Roman charioteers and gladiators who endorsed products and inspired fan clubs. Rome's most paradoxical legacy may be its simultaneous presentation as both cautionary tale and aspirational model. Political theorists from Machiavelli to the American founding fathers studied Rome's constitution while fearing its collapse. Modern populist movements ironically invoke Roman imagery while repeating the same fiscal irresponsibility that debased the denarius. Environmentalists point to Roman deforestation and soil exhaustion as early examples of ecological overshoot. As we enter an era of digital empires and algorithmic governance, Rome's lessons grow more pertinent. The transition from republic to empire raises questions about balancing security and liberty. The Antonine Plague's economic impact offers insights for post-pandemic recovery. Perhaps Rome's ultimate gift is the realization that while technology changes, fundamental human challenges remain. And in studying how one great civilization met those challenges, we gain perspective on our own. The study of Rome's collapse remains one of history's most compelling detective stories, with scholars endlessly debating which factor delivered the fatal blow. Was it the Gothic chieftain Alaric sacking Rome in 410? The deposition of Romulus Augustulus in 476? Or perhaps the catastrophic defeat at Adrianople in 378? The truth, like a shattered mosaic, requires piecing together countless fragments, each telling part of the story. Climate science now reveals disturbing parallels between Rome's decline and our ecological challenges. Tree rings and ice cores show the Roman warm period, 200 BCE, 150 CE, gave way to cooler, unstable weather that devastated harvests. The same lead pipes that delivered water to aristocratic homes may have caused widespread poisoning, much like modern industrial contaminants. Deforestation for shipbuilding and heating created soil erosion that still scars Mediterranean landscapes today, an ancient lesson in unsustainable resource use. Military overextension created vulnerabilities that resonate with modern geopolitics. Rome's borders stretched over 5,000 miles, requiring 300,000 soldiers to garrison, a troop density of just 60 soldiers per mile. Contemporary analysts see eerie similarities in America's global military commitments or Russia's Ukrainian quagmire. The Roman experience suggests even superpowers lack infinite manpower and funds. Economic historians highlight Rome's fiscal death spiral, a cautionary tale for modern nations. As tax revenues dwindled, emperors debased the silver denarius until it contained just 5% precious metal, triggering inflation that's preserved in price edicts listing astronomical costs for basic goods. The military's growing share of the budget, up to 75%, parallels modern defense spending debates, while the wealthy's tax avoidance through rural estates foreshadows modern offshore havens. Perhaps most strikingly, Rome's identity crisis mirrors our cultural anxieties. The 3rd century saw traditional Roman values erode as foreign cults proliferated and barbarians entered imperial service. The elite's failure to integrate new populations created destabilizing divisions, a lesson for today's immigration debates. When Emperor Caracalla granted universal citizenship in 212, it wasn't inclusion but a desperate revenue grab that diluted civic meaning. The Byzantine Empire's 1,000-year survival after Rome's fall offers alternative insights. Their smaller, more defensible territory withstood attacks that crushed the West. Strategic marriages replaced costly wars. Greek language and Christianity provided unifying identity markers. This Rome 2.0 suggests adaptation, not stubborn tradition, preserves civilizations, a lesson for modern nations facing disruptive change. Modern technology lets us simulate Rome's collapse like never before. Climate models recreate agricultural failures. Network theory maps how plagues spread along Roman roads. Economists run counterfactuals testing Diocletian's price controls with modern game theory. These digital experiments confirm what historians long suspected. Rome didn't fall from one cause, but from multiple interconnected failures that overwhelmed its capacity to adapt. The most haunting question isn't why Rome fell, but why we remain obsessed with its demise. Perhaps it's because every flaw that doomed Rome, climate stress, inequality, political polarization, now threatens our world. The Roman mirror reflects back not just their civilization, but our own precarious moment in history. Their ruins stand not just as tourist attractions, but as stone warnings about civilization's fragility in any age. Rome's afterlife in popular imagination reveals as much about our contemporary anxieties as it does about ancient history. From Ridley Scott's Gladiator to HBO's Rome, modern retellings consistently reshape Roman stories to mirror current preoccupations, whether political corruption, gender dynamics, or the perils of absolute power. Video games like Total War, Rome, allow players to rewrite history while paradoxically teaching accurate details about legionary tactics and urban planning. This constant reinterpretation makes Rome not a dead civilization, but a living conversation across centuries. The tourism industry built around Roman ruins offers another layer of modern engagement. Every year, 6 million visitors trek through the Colosseum, their selfie sticks echoing the bread and circuses distraction the arena once provided. Luxury hotels now occupy former patrician villas, where guests pay premium prices to sleep where aristocrats once dined on peacock tongues. The irony is palpable. What Romans built as symbols of power now serve as backdrops for Instagram influencers. Their original meanings transformed, but not entirely erased. Academic research continues uncovering surprising connections between Roman practices and modern life. Nutritionists study the Roman grain dole as an early example of state-sponsored nutrition, while urban planners analyze Pompeii's pedestrian zones as models for car-free cities. Psychologists examine Roman Stoicism's recent resurgence as a response to digital age anxiety, noting how Marcus Aurelius' meditations now appear on CEOs' nightstands alongside business strategy books. The commercialization of Roman heritage walks a fine line between education and exploitation. Authentic Roman recipe dinners feature ingredients no modern palate would recognize, while gladiator school experiences bear little resemblance to the brutal training regimens of antiquity. Yet these sanitized versions serve an important function. They make an alien world accessible, sparking interest that often leads to deeper historical engagement. Digital reconstructions are revolutionizing public understanding of Rome. The Rome Reborn project uses VR to recreate the entire ancient city down to individual shop signs, allowing users to walk streets that haven't existed for millennia. Apps overlay augmented reality reconstructions onto present-day ruins, making the past visually immediate in ways guidebooks never could. This technological revival raises philosophical questions. Are we remembering Rome more accurately, or creating a digital fantasy? The eternal city endures as both warning and aspiration. Political theorists still debate whether America is repeating Rome's trajectory toward imperial decline. Urbanists study Roman infrastructure as models of sustainability. Military colleges teach Hannibal's campaigns as timeless strategy lessons. In courthouses worldwide, Latin legal phrases maintain the illusion of unbroken tradition even as their meanings evolve. Perhaps Rome's greatest legacy is the realization that no civilization disappears completely. Its concrete still strengthens our buildings. Its laws shape our justice. Its language structures our thoughts. The Roman ability to absorb diverse influences while maintaining core identity offers both hope and challenge for our globalized era. As climate change and geopolitical shifts test modern societies, Rome's long shadow reminds us that civilizations aren't destroyed by external forces alone. They can only fall when they lose the will to adapt. The Roman Empire's gender dynamics present a fascinating paradox that continues to challenge modern assumptions. Elite Roman women like Livia and Agrippina wielded tremendous political influence behind the scenes, while legal statutes formally classified them as perpetual minors under male guardianship. This contradiction mirrors contemporary debates about glass ceilings and informal power networks. Recent archaeological discoveries, such as the businesswoman Eumachia's elaborate Pompeii tomb or the London scroll mentioning Lucia the iron merchant, suggest women's economic roles were far more substantial than legal texts indicate. Roman sexual norms defy easy categorization by modern standards. The cultural ideal of virtus, manly virtue, coexisted with widespread homoerotic art and poetry celebrating same-sex relationships. Emperor Hadrian's very public mourning for Antinous, his drowned lover, inspired a religious cult across the empire, a stark contrast to later Victorian attitudes. Yet Roman pederasty differed significantly from Greek models, emphasizing active/passive roles rather than orientation, creating a sexual ethos that feels simultaneously familiar and alien to modern observers. Slavery in Rome reached scales and complexities that still shock the conscience. The wealthy might own hundreds of slaves with hyper-specialized roles, from footmen who only announced certain guests to cooks who exclusively prepared sauces. The slave revolt leader Spartacus remains a pop culture icon, but fewer know about the more common success stories, like Narcissus, Claudius Friedman's secretary, who effectively ran the empire. This spectrum of experience complicates simplistic moral judgments while not diminishing the system's inherent brutality. Roman childhood reveals another layer of social complexity. Wealthy children like Augustus' daughter Julia received rigorous educations, but were often married by 15 for political alliances. Infant mortality rates approaching 30% created emotional distancing practices that seem callous today, naming children only after surviving infancy, or Seneca's chilling advice not to grieve replaceable offspring. Yet tomb inscriptions also show genuine parental love, with one memorial simply stating, "To Felix, who lived 2 years, 7 months. He deserved to live longer." The empire's religious evolution offers profound insights into cultural change. Early Christians were persecuted not for their beliefs, but for refusing to participate in civic rituals that bound society together, an ancient parallel to modern vaccine mandate protests. The eventual Christian triumph created its own paradoxes. Constantine kept the sun god on coins while endorsing Christianity, and pagan temples were often literally repurposed as churches with minimal architectural changes. Rome's social history matters precisely because it resists easy moralizing. The same civilization that created brutal gladiatorial games also developed sophisticated legal protections for animals. The aristocracy that indulged in vomitorium-aided feasts established the first public welfare system. These contradictions force us to confront uncomfortable truths about human societies, that progress rarely moves in straight lines, and that civilized values often coexist with profound cruelty. As modern societies grapple with gender fluidity, income inequality, and religious pluralism, Roman history provides neither perfect models nor simple warnings, but something more valuable: the realization that human social arrangements have always been messy, contradictory works in progress. Their solutions created new problems, their reforms unintended consequences. In studying how one civilization navigated these complexities for centuries, we gain not ready answers, but perspective on our own ongoing social experiments. The Roman Empire's technological achievements reveal a civilization both strikingly advanced and curiously stagnant, offering sobering lessons about innovation and its limitations. Roman engineers mastered concrete formulas so durable that 2,000-year-old harbor structures still withstand Mediterranean waves, yet this recipe was lost during the empire's collapse. Their watermills at Barbegal in southern France created Europe's first industrial-scale mechanical power, yet slave labor discouraged widespread adoption. The Antikythera mechanism, an astronomical computer of Byzantine complexity, remained an aberration rather than sparking a scientific revolution. Transportation networks showcase Rome's logistical brilliance. The cursus publicus courier system could relay messages 500 miles in 24 hours using relay stations and fresh horses, a speed unmatched until the 19th century. Standardized shipping containers, amphorae, and an empire-wide road network enabled olive oil from Spain to reach Britain in weeks. Yet for all this sophistication, Roman merchants never developed bills of exchange or other financial instruments that later fueled European capitalism. Medical practices present similar contradictions. Roman military hospitals featured specialized instruments recognizable to modern surgeons: bone drills, scalpels, obstetrical hooks, and Galen's anatomical studies advanced knowledge despite relying on animal dissections. Yet folk remedies persisted. Pliny recommended wearing a live centipede in a necklace to prevent colds, while childbirth often relied on amulets rather than midwifery skills. The same civilization that built sophisticated aqueducts still believed in demonic possession as a disease cause. Agricultural technology followed this paradoxical pattern. Iron plows, crop rotation, and grafting techniques created surpluses that fed million-strong cities. The villa system combined cash crops with industrial processing, olive presses, wine fermentation vats, grain mills, creating vertically integrated agribusiness centuries before the term existed. Yet soil exhaustion and deforestation from these intensive practices may have contributed to the empire's eventual decline. Military innovations were adopted, then abandoned based on immediate needs rather than sustained development. The Corvus boarding bridge won Rome its first naval victories, then was discarded as unnecessary. Trajan's column depicts ballistae and siege towers of terrifying efficiency, yet these technologies didn't prevent later defeats to less advanced foes. The empire's greatest military asset, standardized training and infrastructure, proved both its strength and its vulnerability when facing unconventional threats. Perhaps Rome's most significant technological legacy is its demonstration that progress isn't inevitable. The empire created conditions perfect for sustained innovation: peaceful trade routes, unified measurement systems, knowledge sharing across continents. Yet without cultural incentives for pure research or mechanisms to preserve knowledge systematically, many advancements disappeared during crises. The lesson resonates today. Our own technological civilization, for all its apparent robustness, may be equally fragile if foundational supports weaken. Modern societies confronting climate change and energy transitions might take note. Roman engineers adapted brilliantly to local conditions: solar heating in bath complexes, passive cooling in villas, but never developed a viable alternative to wood and slave power. Their technological achievements ultimately couldn't compensate for political and economic failures. In this light, Rome's history offers both inspiration, showing what coordinated human effort can achieve, and warning, reminding us that no civilization's technological edge is permanent without the social structures to sustain it. The Roman Empire's final centuries present a slow-motion unraveling that holds disturbing mirrors to modern geopolitical anxieties. Imagine the creeping dread as 3rd century Romans watched inflation render their life savings worthless. A silver denarius that bought a tunic in 200 CE could barely purchase a loaf by 260 CE. The Antonine Plague's return in 251 CE carried off thousands daily, emptying entire towns, a scenario that feels uncomfortably familiar after recent global pandemics. As barbarian raids penetrated deep into Italy itself, the unthinkable became routine. In 267 CE, the Heruli actually sacked Athens, that symbol of classical learning. The empire's desperate survival strategies reveal much about institutional decay. Diocletian's price control edict of 301 CE reads like economic desperation, fixing maximum prices for everything from British wool to African dates, with death penalties for violators. Archaeologists find evidence of widespread cheating, with black market goods circulating under false labels. The workforce became hereditary by decree. Bakers' sons forbidden to change professions, soldiers' sons automatically enlisted, creating a rigid caste system antithetical to Rome's earlier social mobility. Military overstretch created bizarre paradoxes. To man the frontiers, Rome increasingly recruited the very barbarians it was fighting, whole Germanic tribes given land in exchange for military service. By 400 CE, the empire's Roman armies often didn't speak Latin and owed loyalty to their Germanic commanders rather than distant emperors. The Notitia Dignitatum, a bureaucratic document listing all imperial positions, reads like tragicomedy, grandiose titles like Count of the Sacred Largesses for officials presiding over empty treasuries. The East-West divide that ultimately saved Byzantium while dooming Rome began as an administrative convenience. But where Constantinople controlled the wealthy Anatolian and Egyptian breadbaskets, the Western Empire relied on increasingly unstable North Africa. When the Vandals captured Carthage in 439 CE, they severed Rome's grain supply, an ancient version of modern energy crises. The East's Greek identity and compact borders proved more resilient than the West's overextended Latin domain. Cultural fatigue manifested in subtle but telling ways. Elite Romans stopped commissioning new forum statues by the 4th century, simply reusing old ones with recarved heads, a practice called damnatio memoriae that now signaled not condemnation but creative exhaustion. The magnificent 4th century walls around Rome, still standing today, were built from scavenged marble taken from crumbling monuments, a civilization literally eating its own past to survive. Modern parallels emerge with eerie clarity. The US dollar's inflation resembles the denarius debasement. Private military contractors mirror Rome's barbarian mercenaries. Even cultural recycling finds its echo in Hollywood's endless reboots and sequels. The lesson isn't that history repeats, but that human societies under stress often reach for similar coping mechanisms, with similarly mixed results. Rome's protracted decline offers neither comforting catastrophe nor heroic rebirth narratives. It shows instead how great powers can erode gradually through 1,000 compromises, each logical in isolation, collectively fatal. The Western Empire didn't so much fall as fade. Its institutions hollowed out until one day, people simply stopped pretending the emperor in Ravenna mattered. In an age of climate crises, pandemics, and geopolitical realignments, this slow unraveling may be Rome's most relevant and unsettling legacy. The Roman Empire's legacy persists not as a monolithic relic, but as a living constellation of ideas that each generation reinterprets through contemporary lenses. Modern nations engage in a complex dance with Rome's memory, simultaneously emulating its achievements while distancing themselves from its failures. The European Union's very structure, with its tension between member states' sovereignty and central authority, consciously echoes Rome's balance between local autonomy and imperial unity. Yet Brussels carefully avoids direct Roman imagery, having learned from Mussolini's disastrous attempts to resurrect imperial glory. Lawmakers across the globe still wrestle with Roman precedents in unexpected ways. The U.S. Senate's filibuster rules descend from Roman obstruction tactics like Cato the Younger's endless speeches. Modern property laws grapple with interpretations of Roman concepts like usucapio, acquiring ownership through long use, particularly relevant in digital asset disputes. Even international maritime law retains principles from the Lex Rhodia, a 2nd century BCE commercial code for Mediterranean trade. The military-industrial complex follows patterns first established in Imperial Rome. Defense contractors today mirror the private armories that supplied late Roman armies, while the Pentagon's revolving door between generals and weapons manufacturers finds its precursor in Roman officers investing in arms workshops. The geopolitical strategy of maintaining buffer states recalls Rome's client kingdoms along the Rhine and Euphrates frontiers. Urban planners face Roman-scale challenges with updated tools. Mexico City's sinking crisis mirrors Rome's subsidence problems from overused aquifers. Modern Sponge City initiatives to manage flooding adapt principles from Roman drainage systems. The concrete revolution of the 20th century, for all its technological advances, still hasn't matched the durability of Roman seawater-resistant mixes, a humbling realization that has sparked new research into ancient recipes. Cultural institutions perform delicate balancing acts with Roman heritage. Museums increasingly contextualize looted artifacts like the Benin bronzes, originally taken following Roman plunder models, while facing their own restitution dilemmas. The Vatican's Latin inscriptions maintain a facade of continuity, even as the language's meaning fades from common understanding. Hollywood's Rome continues to shape popular perceptions, despite historians' protests about accuracy, just as Renaissance painters depicted Romans in contemporary armor. The digital age has created new forms of Roman revival. Cryptocurrency enthusiasts invoke denarius imagery while repeating Rome's mistakes with currency debasement. Virtual reality reconstructions allow millions to experience Roman life while risking the creation of sanitized, theme park versions of history. Online forums debate Rome's relevance with an intensity that would astonish actual Romans. Reddit threads dissect legion tactics with the same fervor as medieval monks copying Livy's manuscripts. Perhaps Rome's ultimate lesson is that civilizations never truly die. They fractalize into countless influences, some obvious, others hidden. The Roman cement in our sidewalks, the Latin in our legal briefs, the senatorial procedures in our legislatures. These aren't just historical footnotes, but active participants in modern life. As climate change and political instability test our global order, we're unconsciously repeating Rome's experiments in federalism, multiculturalism, and crisis management. The question isn't whether we'll follow Rome's path, but whether we can learn from its 2 millennia of trial and error to write a different ending. The study of Roman history has entered a revolutionary phase as cutting-edge technologies collide with ancient evidence, fundamentally transforming our understanding of antiquity. Advanced spectral imaging techniques now decipher previously illegible texts on recycled parchment, palimpsests, uncovering lost works by authors like Galen and Seneca. In 2023, researchers at the University of Kentucky used artificial intelligence to reconstruct missing portions of Pliny the Elder's natural history from medieval commentary fragments, a digital resurrection that would astonish Renaissance humanists. Archaeogenetics is rewriting narratives of Roman mobility and diversity. DNA analysis from London's Roman-era burials reveals a globalized city where 30% of residents had North African or Middle Eastern ancestry, while isotopic studies of teeth enamel trace individual life journeys from Egypt's deserts to Britain's rainy frontiers. The Rome Transformed Project's ground-penetrating radar has mapped entire buried neighborhoods, showing how immigrant communities like Rome's Syrian quarter maintained cultural identities while adopting Roman lifestyles. Climate science now provides startling context for historical events. Tree-ring data from the French Alps proves that Julius Caesar's crossing of the Rubicon coincided with severe drought conditions, explaining Pompey's difficulty mustering troops in Picunum. Lead pollution levels in Greenland ice cores precisely track Rome's economic booms and busts, spiking during Trajan's conquests and plunging during the crisis of the 3rd century. These interdisciplinary approaches reveal an empire deeply vulnerable to environmental factors previously overlooked by historians. Digital humanities projects are democratizing access to Roman heritage. The open-access Pleiades Gazetteer geolocates over 34,000 ancient places, allowing anyone to trace Roman trade routes with Google Earth precision. Stanford's Orbis network analysis tool calculates travel times and costs across the empire under different seasonal conditions, revealing how a letter from Alexandria to Rome could take anywhere from 15 to 60 days depending on Mediterranean winds. Yet these technological advances raise profound epistemological questions. When VR reconstructions of Pompeii's brothels become more vivid than the surviving ruins, do they enhance understanding or create digital fantasies? As machine learning predicts missing text and damaged manuscripts, where does scholarship end and algorithmic speculation begin? The British Museum's controversial 3D printed repatriation program, creating perfect replicas of contested artifacts, tests whether physical authenticity still matters in the digital age. The most exciting developments bridge ancient and modern expertise. Contemporary concrete scientists working with marine archaeologists have finally decoded the Roman seawater concrete recipe, its self-healing properties now inspiring sustainable infrastructure projects. Military strategists collaborate with historians to simulate alternative outcomes for famous battles using modern game theory, revealing how contingent Rome's rise really was. As we stand at this crossroads of technological possibility and historical truth, one lesson emerges clearly. Rome's history is never finished being written. Each generation applies new tools and perspectives, uncovering layers of complexity that previous eras missed. The Romans themselves were relentless documenters of their own achievements, but only now, 2 millennia later, are we developing the methods to fully understand what they left behind. In this sense, the study of ancient Rome has become a testing ground for how humanity might preserve and interpret all civilizations, including our own digital one that may someday require similar deciphering. The Roman Empire's environmental history emerges as one of the most urgent areas of modern study, revealing a civilization that both shaped and was shaped by its ecological context in ways that resonate deeply with contemporary concerns. Deforestation patterns visible in pollen core samples tell a story of resource exploitation that spanned continents. Cedar from Lebanon for temples, oak from Gaul for ships, olive wood from Tunisia for fuel. The empire's insatiable appetite for marble created quarries whose scars still mark Mediterranean landscapes today, while lead and silver mining left toxic legacies that persist in soil samples across former Roman territories. Roman agricultural practices demonstrate both innovation and short-sightedness. Their sophisticated irrigation systems transformed North Africa into the empire's breadbasket. Yet over-farming and goat grazing likely accelerated desertification in regions that remain arid today. The introduction of new crops, peaches from Persia, cherries from Anatolia, created dietary revolutions, while monoculture planting of olive trees and grapevines for cash crops made entire regions vulnerable to blights and market fluctuations. Modern agronomists study Roman soil depletion as an early case of unsustainable intensive farming. Water management presents another paradoxical legacy. Roman aqueducts and sewer systems represent engineering marvels, yet lead piping may have contributed to public health crises. Skeletal remains show elevated lead levels in urban populations. The empire's elaborate bath culture consumed staggering water volumes. The baths of Caracalla used over 8 million liters daily, equivalent to a modern city of 30,000 people. Climate reconstructions suggest some aqueducts failed during prolonged droughts, creating hydraulic crises that destabilized entire cities. Animal extinctions and introductions reveal Rome's global ecological impact. North African elephants and Syrian lions disappeared from their native habitats due to arena demands, while Roman merchants accidentally spread black rats across Europe via grain ships. The empire's taste for exotic pets and menageries began the long tradition of wildlife trafficking that continues today. Paradoxically, Roman villa landscapes with their fish ponds and game preserves also represent early examples of conscious conservation efforts. The industrial scale of Roman resource extraction foreshadowed modern environmental challenges. Spanish gold mines like Las Medulas consumed entire mountains using hydraulic mining techniques, their red scars still visible from space. The Rio Tinto copper mines poison rivers with acidic runoff that flows even now, 2 millennia after operations ceased. Recent studies suggest atmospheric lead pollution from Roman smelting reached levels not seen again until the Industrial Revolution. Perhaps Rome's most relevant environmental lesson is how ecological pressures interacted with social and political factors. Food shortages from climate fluctuations exacerbated urban unrest. Timber scarcity forced naval design changes that weakened maritime defenses. Soil exhaustion in Italy increased reliance on provincial grain, creating strategic vulnerabilities when supply lines were cut. These interconnected crises suggest that environmental factors may have played a greater role in Rome's decline than traditionally acknowledged, a sobering perspective for our era of climate change. Modern sustainability movements increasingly look to Roman practices for inspiration. The rediscovery of self-healing concrete formulas could reduce modern construction's carbon footprint. Traditional Roman dry farming techniques are being revived in drought-stricken Mediterranean areas. Even the much-maligned garum fish sauce is studied as an efficient protein preservation method. In this light, Roman environmental history offers not just cautionary tales, but also unexpected solutions. If we have the wisdom to learn both what they did wrong and occasionally what they did right. The Roman Empire's economic system presents a fascinating case study in proto-globalization, with lessons that resonate powerfully in our interconnected world. Picture the bustling docks of Ostia where Egyptian grain ships unloaded alongside Spanish oil amphorae and Syrian glassware, a scene resembling modern container ports. Roman merchants developed financial instruments surprisingly similar to contemporary practices. The equivalent of letters of credit called permutations enabled safe long-distance transactions, while societates functioned as early joint stock companies spreading trade risks. The empire's monetary union, with standardized gold aurei and silver denarii circulating from Britain to Babylon, anticipated the euro by 2 millennia. Labor markets in the empire displayed disturbing modern parallels. Skilled craftsmen in urban centers formed collegia, professional associations resembling modern unions that provided benefits and networking. Yet the widespread use of slave labor created a distorted economy where 30 to 40% of Italy's population was enslaved at the empire's height, suppressing wages for free workers much like undocumented immigration debates today. Recent archaeological work at Pompeii's workshop districts reveals how slave-run businesses competed directly with free artisans, creating tensions preserved in election graffiti. Production and consumption patterns show both sophistication and excess. Roman factories in Gaul produced millions of identical red-gloss pottery vessels, terra sigillata, using molds and division of labor, a precursor to industrial mass production. Elite consumption reached absurd levels. Seneca mocked aristocrats who owned hundreds of identical citrus wood tables just for prestige. Yet ordinary Romans also participated in consumer culture, as shown by the mountain of broken oil amphorae at Monte Testaccio, an ancient landfill containing an estimated 53 million vessels. The empire's transportation network created the first truly integrated Mediterranean market. Prices for staples like wheat showed remarkable consistency across provinces, adjusted for transport costs, indicating efficient market integration. The Roman road system reduced travel times so dramatically that a message could cross the empire in about 30 days, comparable to medieval Europe's best speeds. Shipping lanes connected Alexandria to Marseille in 30 days when winds favored, slower but cheaper than overland transport. The same cost-speed trade-offs modern logistics firms still calculate. Taxation and fiscal policies reveal an evolving understanding of economic management. Early emperors maintained the fiction of no direct taxation on Italian land while squeezing provinces, much like modern tax havens. The 1% sales tax, centesima rerum venalium, funded Rome's fire brigade, an early example of dedicated public service funding. Inflation control attempts, from Nero's coinage reforms to Diocletian's doomed price edict, show rulers grappling with monetary policy without modern economic tools. Rome's economic legacy is profoundly ambiguous. It demonstrated the prosperity possible from free-ish trade and standardized systems, yet also showed how inequality and resource depletion can undermine growth. Modern economists note parallels between Rome's reliance on slave labor and today's automation anxieties, between its grain dole and universal basic income debates. Perhaps the most valuable lesson is that economic systems aren't abstract constructs. They're deeply embedded in social values and environmental realities, a truth we're still learning 2,000 years later. The religious transformation of the Roman Empire presents one of history's most profound cultural revolutions, with ripple effects still felt in today's spiritual landscape. Imagine the religious cacophony of 2nd century Rome, Mithraic initiates chanting in underground temples while Isis priests paraded through streets strewn with rose petals, and Jewish communities debated the teachings of rabbis in synagogue courtyards. Into this vibrant pluralism came Christianity, a minority sect that within 3 centuries would become the state religion through a process more complex than simple imperial decree. The appeal of mystery religions like Mithraism reveals much about Roman spiritual yearning. Soldiers across the empire worshiped the sun god Mithras in cave-like Mithraea, their 7-stage initiation rites offering male camaraderie and promises of salvation. The cult's popularity, especially among the military, suggests a widespread desire for personal spiritual experience beyond formal state rituals. Archaeological finds from London to Syria show standardized iconography of Mithras slaying the bull, evidence of an empire-wide franchise operation that Starbucks might envy. Christianity's rise owes much to its adaptability to Roman social structures. Early house churches mimicked the Roman domus layout, with the atrium becoming worship space. Paul's letters used Roman legal terminology, justification as a courtroom concept. By the 4th century, bishops organized churches along Roman administrative lines, and basilicas, formerly secular courthouses, became Christian worship spaces. This strategic acculturation helped transform a persecuted sect into an imperial religion. The imperial cult created a unique fusion of politics and spirituality. Provincial temples displayed statues of deified emperors alongside traditional gods, their ceremonies reinforcing loyalty to Rome. The ingenious system allowed local elites to demonstrate Roman allegiance while maintaining traditional worship, until Christians' refusal to participate marked them as subversives. Recent scholarship shows how this civil religion functioned similarly to modern patriotic rituals, binding diverse subjects through shared symbolic acts. Paganism's decline wasn't as abrupt as once believed. The Villa of the Mysteries in Pompeii preserves stunning Dionysian frescoes, while 5th century letters complain of persistent rural pagan practices, what Christians called superstition. Archaeological evidence shows temples gradually converted to churches, the Pantheon's survival as a Christian site being the most famous example. This gradual transition suggests more cultural continuity than previously acknowledged. Modern religious movements unconsciously echo Roman patterns. Megachurches adopt marketing strategies reminiscent of mystery cult recruitment. New Age spirituality borrows freely from Roman syncretism, mixing traditions as freely as any 3rd century Roman. Even secular institutions replicate religious forms, sports stadiums as temples of communal experience, political conventions as ritual gatherings. The Roman experience reminds us that spiritual impulses constantly reinvent themselves within changing cultural containers. The late empire's religious conflicts between Christian factions, between pagans and Christians, between church and state, established patterns still playing out today. The Donatist controversy over priestly purity anticipates modern debates about clergy misconduct. Constantine's manipulation of the Council of Nicaea set precedents for political interference in religious doctrine. In this light, Rome's religious transformation isn't ancient history, but an ongoing case study in how belief systems adapt, or fail to adapt, to shifting cultural landscapes. The Roman military machine evolved into a remarkably sophisticated institution that combined brutal efficiency with surprising social mobility, creating patterns that still influence modern armed forces. Legionary recruitment posters found preserved in Egypt promised citizenship after service, an ancient version of today's military recruitment incentives. The Vindolanda tablets from Britain's northern frontier reveal soldiers' daily lives through personal letters requesting socks and beer, while duty rosters show auxiliary troops from Syria patrolling rainy Hadrian's Wall. This blend of bureaucratic precision and human detail makes Rome's military both impressively modern and profoundly alien. Training regimens demonstrate the Roman emphasis on discipline and muscle memory. Recruits practiced with double-weighted wooden swords against man-high posts, repeating strikes thousands of times until movements became instinctive. Marching drills with full kit, weighing 60-plus pounds, built endurance, while synchronized swimming exercises in full armor prepared troops for amphibious operations. Modern special forces training programs unconsciously echo these methods. The Navy SEALs' Hell Week parallels the Legion's relentless conditioning. The Roman military-industrial complex pioneered systems still relevant today. State-owned fabrici, arms factories. In cities like Augustodunum mass-produced standardized armor and weapons, while private contractors supplied everything from nails to siege engines. Quartermaster records from Masada show astonishing logistical precision. Each Cantaburnium, 8-man squad, allocated precisely measured grain, salt, and vinegar rations. The Army's medical corps, with field hospitals and specialist surgeons, achieved survival rates for battlefield wounds that wouldn't be matched until the 19th century. Social mobility through military service created unexpected opportunities. Tombstones tell stories like that of Numerius, a Gallic tribesman who rose to become a cavalry commander. The Navy, often manned by non-citizens, offered particularly rapid advancement. Freedman Claudius Drusus became a fleet prefect. These meritocratic elements coexisted with brutal discipline, decimation, executing every 10th man in underperforming units, maintained order through terror. The late empire's military adaptations foreshadowed modern hybrid warfare. As traditional legions proved unwieldy against guerrilla raids, Rome created specialized units like the numeroi, rapid reaction forces, and limitanii, border militias. Germanic federates served under their own chiefs, but with Roman pay and titles, much like modern proxy forces. The Notitia Dignitatum, a 5th century military manual, lists exotic units like camel cavalry alongside traditional formations, showing an empire pragmatically adapting to new threats. Rome's military legacy persists in surprising ways. The U.S. Marine Corps' eagle, globe, and anchor emblem consciously mimics legionary standards. NATO's phonetic alphabet retains Latin words, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. Even modern military law descends from Roman precedents regarding desertion and insubordination. More profoundly, Rome demonstrated both the strengths of professional standing armies and their dangers when loyalty shifts from state to commanders, a lesson relevant to every modern nation. Perhaps most remarkably, Roman veteran settlements created enduring cultural footprints. From York to Jerusalem, retired soldiers formed colonies that became cities, spreading Roman culture through personal example rather than coercion. The hybrid Romano-British, Romano-African, and Romano-Syrian cultures that emerged show how military service could be both an instrument of conquest and a vehicle for integration, a paradox that modern multi-ethnic armies still navigate today. The Roman legal system represents one of antiquity's most enduring intellectual achievements, its principles still breathing life into modern courtrooms worldwide. Picture the bustling basilica where jurists like Ulpian and Gaius debated fine points of contract law while outside. Litigants consulted legal graffiti scrawled on walls, ancient equivalents of today's 1-800 lawyer ads. The Corpus Juris Civilis, compiled under Justinian in the 6th century, became the DNA of European legal tradition, its influence stretching from medieval canon law to the Napoleonic Code and beyond. Roman law's revolutionary concepts continue to shape contemporary justice. The presumption of innocence, incumbit probatio cadicit, non cognigat, remains foundational in criminal courts worldwide. Class action lawsuits descend from the Roman actio popularis, allowing citizen groups to bring suits. Even modern intellectual property law traces back to edicts protecting authors against unauthorized book copying, an ancient copyright system for scribes laboring in scriptoria. The court system blended formality with pragmatism in ways still recognizable. Small claims courts handled minor disputes through simplified procedures, while the praetor's edict allowed judges to adapt laws to new situations, a precursor to common law precedent. Legal representation existed but wasn't mandatory. Preserved court transcripts show passionate self-representation alongside slick professional advocates. The pro bono tradition began with Roman aristocrats building reputations through free legal aid, much like modern law firm philanthropy. Property law developed sophisticated solutions to timeless problems. The usucapio doctrine, acquiring ownership through long use, still informs squatters' rights cases. Condominium ownership structures descend directly from Roman superficies rules for multi-story buildings. Maritime law preserves principles from the Lex Rhodia about jettisoning cargo during storms, the ancient origin of modern insurance concepts. Family law reveals both progressive and oppressive elements. Roman women could initiate divorce and retain dowries, but the patria potestas doctrine gave fathers life and death authority over children. The tension between individual rights and family authority created legal puzzles that still resonate in today's debates over parental rights versus state intervention. The legal profession structure will feel familiar to modern lawyers. Specialization existed. Some jurists focused on inheritance, others on property disputes. Law schools in Beirut and Constantinople offered multi-year programs. The cursus honorum required political aspirants to first serve as advocates, an ancient version of the revolving door between law and politics. Rome's greatest legal legacy may be the concept of law itself as a rational system rather than arbitrary ruler's whim. The idea that written statutes should constrain even emperors, however often violated in practice, planted seeds for constitutional governance. When modern judges cite precedents or legislators debate statutory interpretation, they participate in a dialogue Rome began 2 millennia ago, proof that some legal innovations truly are eternal. The Roman Empire's urban life created a template for city living that continues to shape our metropolitan experiences in profound, yet often unnoticed ways. Step into the crowded Subura district at dawn, where the aroma of freshly baked bread from communal ovens mingled with the stench of chamber pots emptied from upper-story windows, a sensory cacophony not unlike modern urban contrasts. The insulae, apartment blocks, that housed Rome's masses reached dizzying heights of 6 or 7 stories. Their jerry-built construction so prone to collapse that Augustus instituted the first building height restrictions, an ancient precursor to modern zoning laws. The rhythm of daily life followed patterns startlingly familiar to contemporary city dwellers. Morning commutes flooded narrow streets as shopkeepers rolled up their shutters, their goods spilling onto sidewalks in violation of municipal codes. Archaeologists find repeated complaints about blocked thoroughfares. The midday siesta offered respite from the heat before an evening of socializing at bathhouses or taverns. This diurnal cycle, born of Mediterranean climate and urban density, persists in cities from Madrid to Mexico City. Public services mirrored modern municipal efforts with ingenious solutions. The vigilas served as combined firefighter police units patrolling with buckets and axes. Street cleaners swept debris into central collection points, while underground sewers like the Cloaca Maxima carried waste to the Tiber, though unlike modern treatment plants, simply dumped it downstream. The Kura Anoni, grain dole, system required bureaucratic precision matching any modern social welfare program, with ration tickets and designated distribution points. Commerce thrived in specialized districts that prefigure today's urban zoning. The Via Sacra glittered with luxury goods shops, while the Velabrum hosted more pungent trades like fish sauce production. Shopping malls appeared in the form of Trajan's Market, its multi-level design housing 150 shops under one roof, an ancient predecessor to modern gallerias. Street food vendors sold quick meals to workers, their thermopolia, fast food counters, discovered in Pompeii with menu items still visible in faded frescoes. Entertainment options blurred the line between culture and escapism. Public libraries offered literacy alongside people-watching opportunities. Theaters staged everything from highbrow Terrence comedies to raucous mime shows that would make modern reality TV seem refined. The Colosseum spectacle economy employed thousands: animal trainers, stagehands, armorers, much like today's sports and entertainment industries. Even the tradition of intermission snacks began here, with vendors hawking nuts and dried fruits during arena breaks. Urban planning balanced practical needs with ideological messaging. Straight roads radiating from forums projected imperial power while facilitating troop movements. Public squares displayed captured enemy ships and monuments to military victories, ancient versions of nationalist architecture. Yet beneath this grandeur, most Romans lived in cramped rentals where privacy was scarce and fire risks constant, not unlike modern housing crises in global cities. The psychological toll of urban density manifested in ways familiar to modern city dwellers. Seneca complained about noise pollution keeping him awake, chariot wheels on stones, bathhouse shouters, and pre-dawn market clamor. Graffiti reveals both communal bonds and social tensions, from political slogans to personal insults scratched onto walls. This complex interplay of opportunity and stress, anonymity and community, makes Roman urbanites our spiritual ancestors in navigating the challenges and rewards of metropolitan life. The Roman Empire's provincial administration created a template for governing diverse territories that still informs modern federal systems and colonial legacies. Imagine the arrival of a Roman governor in newly conquered Britain, a bureaucratic spectacle of census takers, tax assessors, and military surveyors transforming tribal lands into imperial assets. The empire's genius lay in flexible governance. Some regions like Egypt became imperial property, others like Greece maintained nominal autonomy, while client kingdoms on the frontiers served as buffer states. This multi-tiered system allowed Rome to rule 60 million people with an astonishingly small bureaucracy of about 300 senior officials, a feat that makes modern governments appear bloated by comparison. Romanization, the process of cultural assimilation, operated through subtle mechanisms that still influence globalization today. Local elites adopted Roman dress and built villas to signal status, much like developing world aristocrats today embrace Western lifestyles. Latin became the language of advancement, but indigenous tongues persisted in rural areas, a linguistic hierarchy visible in modern post-colonial states. Provincial cities competed to build amphitheaters and baths, not unlike today's global cities vying for skyscrapers and stadiums. Yet archaeology reveals this wasn't one-way imposition. Romano-British temples blended Celtic and classical styles, while North African mosaics incorporated local motifs into Roman designs. Tax collection systems combined efficiency with adaptability. In stable regions like Asia Minor, Rome contracted local elites as tax farmers. In frontier zones like Germania, the army collected taxes in kind, grain, hides, and manpower. The imperial census, conducted every 14 years, was so thorough that Jesus' birth narrative in Luke references it. Modern property tax systems and national censuses descend directly from these Roman innovations, though thankfully without the accompanying military occupation. Infrastructure investment followed strategic priorities that mirror modern development policies. Roman roads initially served military needs but boosted local economies. The Via Egnatia became the Balkans' commercial backbone. Aqueducts prioritized provincial capitals, creating urban/rural divides still visible in former Roman territories. Mining operations in Spain and Britain extracted resources with brutal efficiency, leaving environmental scars that prefigure today's extraction debates. Recent LiDAR surveys show how Roman centuriation, land division systems, permanently altered landscapes from Tunisia to the Netherlands. The provincial experience varied dramatically based on geography and chronology. Early republican conquests like Sicily were exploited ruthlessly, while later imperial additions like Gaul saw significant investment. Some regions became more Roman than Rome itself. Southern France's Provençal culture still carries Latin imprints 1,500 years later. Others, like Britain, reverted quickly to pre-Roman patterns after the legions left, their Roman veneer as thin as the surviving ruins suggest. Modern parallels abound in both positive and troubling ways. The EU's structural funds for poorer regions echo Roman infrastructure investments. America's military bases abroad function somewhat like Roman frontier garrisons. The British Raj's civilizing mission consciously imitated Roman imperial rhetoric. These comparisons remind us that the challenges of governing diverse territories, balancing central control with local autonomy, extracting resources while maintaining stability, are ancient dilemmas with no perfect solutions. Rome's ultimate provincial legacy may be the paradox that empires can simultaneously exploit and develop, oppress and integrate. The very roads built to control conquered peoples became avenues for their economic advancement. The Latin imposed as a language of domination evolved into the Romance languages spoken proudly today. In our era of globalization and cultural exchange, the Roman provincial experience offers neither simple moral lessons nor practical blueprints, but rather a complex case study in how power, culture, and identity interact across vast spaces and long durations. The Roman Empire's educational system established foundational approaches to learning that continue to influence pedagogical methods today. Picture a Roman school at dawn, students hunched over wax tablets in a sparsely furnished room, reciting lessons under the watchful eye of a pedagogist wielding a ferule, a wooden ruler for corporal punishment. Wealthy children studied in home classrooms adorned with Greek art, while poorer students crowded into tabernae, shopfront schools, where the cacophony of the street provided constant distraction. This stark divide between elite and mass education foreshadowed enduring inequalities in access to learning. Roman education progressed through three distinct tiers that still structure modern systems. The literator taught basic literacy and numeracy. Archaeologists have found practice tablets with alphabet exercises strikingly similar to today's elementary worksheets. At the grammaticus level, students analyzed classical texts word by word, memorizing vast passages of Virgil and Homer, a precursor to modern literature studies. The reader perfected public speaking through elaborate exercises in persuasion and debate, training that directly fed into political and legal careers. This trivium, three-part curriculum, would evolve into the medieval liberal arts education and eventually inform modern university structures. Teaching methods blended rote memorization with creative application. Students learned grammar through repetitive chanting of declensions, yet also composed original speeches on hypothetical cases. Should Cato have supported Caesar's reforms? Elite education emphasized Socratic questioning, with tutors challenging students to defend positions logically. Remarkably, some teaching tools feel modern. The abacus, Roman counting board, developed early math skills, while wax tablets allowed for error correction through simple smoothing, an ancient version of the modern whiteboard. Higher education flourished in centers like Athens and Alexandria, where students from across the empire studied philosophy, medicine, and law. These multicultural academic hubs attracted scholars much like today's global universities, though travel was riskier. Letters complain of bandits and shipwrecks en route. The Museum of Alexandria functioned as an ancient research university, with state-funded scholars, a vast library, and even dissection labs where Herophilus pioneered anatomy studies. Education's social purposes mirrored contemporary debates. For the elite, it cultivated leadership skills and cultural polish. Cicero argued that oratory training created better senators. For ambitious freedmen's children, it offered social mobility. The poet Horace credited his education with elevating him from humble origins. Yet most Romans received only practical vocational training, learning trades through apprenticeship, a system that persists in modern technical education. The empire's linguistic policies created complex bilingualism with modern parallels. Educated Romans spoke Greek for intellectual matters and Latin for administration, much like English's global role today. Provincial schools taught Latin as the language of opportunity, while local tongues persisted at home, a dynamic seen in former colonies worldwide. Even Roman language teaching methods survive. Modern natural approach language learning echoes how Roman children acquired Greek through immersion. Rome's educational legacy persists in both admirable and problematic forms. The emphasis on rhetorical persuasion still shapes Western political discourse, for better and worse. Elite boarding schools consciously emulate Roman models of character formation through classical studies. Meanwhile, modern debates about standardized testing versus creative thinking replay ancient tensions between rote memorization and critical analysis. Perhaps most profoundly, Rome demonstrated that education systems inevitably reflect and reinforce social hierarchies, a reality we're still struggling to reconcile with ideals of equal opportunity. The Roman Empire's culinary traditions reveal a gastronomic world both alien and familiar, where lavish elite banquets coexisted with plebeian street food in a hierarchy of consumption that mirrors modern food cultures. Imagine the sensory overload of Rome's markets. Salted fish from Spain aging in open barrels, pungent garum fermenting in Pompeian workshops, and exotic spices like Indian pepper arriving in quantities so vast they were used as collateral for loans. The elite culinary scene reached absurd heights of extravagance. Emperor Vitellius served his legendary Shield of Minerva dish containing rare ingredients from every corner of the empire, while Trimalchio's fictional feast in Petronius Satyricon parroted gourmet excess, with dishes like live birds sewn inside roasted pigs. Roman food technology achieved remarkable sophistication for its time. The empire's first industrial-scale food production appeared in Campanian fish sauce factories and Ostian bakeries, where donkeys powered flour mills. Glass-blowing innovations created storage vessels that kept olive oil fresh for years, while lead-lined refrigerators cooled delicacies with snow brought from mountaintops. The transportation network enabled regional specialization. British oysters became Rome's sushi equivalent, prized for making the 1,500-mile journey alive in moist seaweed packages. Modern food safety concerns find ancient echoes in laws prosecuting bakers who adulterated flour with chalk or sawdust. The plebeian diet tells a more modest but equally fascinating story. Thermopolium excavations in Pompeii reveal fast food menus featuring lentil stews, chickpea pancakes, and cheap wine mixed with honey, ancient comfort foods. Military rations discovered at Vindolanda Fort include bacon, hardtack, and beer, showing how army logistics standardized eating habits across the empire. The grain dole ensured basic calorie intake for urban masses, though reliance on Egyptian wheat created strategic vulnerabilities when shipments failed. a precursor to modern debates about food security and import dependence. Dining rituals reflected and reinforced social hierarchies. Elite convivia, dinner parties, featured strict seating by status, with the host reclining on the best couch while freedmen sat on chairs. Table manners became cultural markers. Using fingers was acceptable, but licking them vulgar. The vomitorium myth persists despite being a modern misconception. Romans did practice intentional vomiting at feasts, but in designated bowls rather than special rooms. These dining codes functioned like modern etiquette guides, distinguishing the refined from the crude. Religious and medicinal beliefs deeply influenced Roman foodways. Pythagorean vegetarians avoided beans believing they contained souls, while garlic was both a peasant staple and a magical charm against evil. Medical texts by Galen and others prescribed diets balancing the four humors, an ancient version of today's nutritional science fads. The line between pharmacy and pantry blurred. Saffron treated depression, fermented fish sauce aided digestion, and snail ash supposedly whitened teeth. Rome's culinary legacy survives in surprising ways. Italian pasta dishes descend from Roman laganum, sheet dough, while French haute cuisine inherits Roman sauce techniques. The Mediterranean diet, now promoted by nutritionists, essentially revives plebeian Roman staples: olive oil, whole grains, and legumes. Even modern food trends like nose-to-tail eating and locavore movements have Roman precedents in frugal peasant cooking and elite obsession with hyperlocal specialties. Perhaps most profoundly, Roman food history demonstrates how eating habits simultaneously reflect and shape empires. The demand for Spanish olive oil and African grain redirected landscapes through monoculture. The spice trade connected Rome to distant Asia, while garum factories industrialized fish processing on an unprecedented scale. In studying Roman food, we see not just ancient recipes, but the birth of globalized food systems whose consequences, both nourishing and destructive, we're still digesting today. The Roman Empire's entertainment industry created a complex ecosystem of spectacle and leisure that continues to shape modern mass culture in profound ways. Imagine the thunderous roar of 50,000 spectators in the Flavian amphitheater as a Retiarius gladiator tangled his net around a secutor's sword arm, a scene blending athleticism and brutality that still informs our sports entertainment today. The games, Ludi, weren't merely diversions but sophisticated instruments of social control, with emperors carefully calibrating their frequency and extravagance to maintain public order, an ancient predecessor to modern, bread and circuses political strategies. The gladiatorial games developed into a sprawling commercial enterprise with surprising modern parallels. Top fighters became brand-name celebrities, their likenesses appearing on oil lamps and frescoes much like today's athlete endorsements. Gladiator training schools, Ludi, functioned as combination sports academies and prisons, where investors carefully managed fighters' diets and training regimens to maximize returns. The game's elaborate production values, from exotic animal imports to hydraulic stage machinery, required budgets rivaling modern blockbuster films, funded through corporate sponsorships from wealthy elites seeking political favor. Chariot racing in the Circus Maximus created fan cultures eerily similar to modern sports tribalism. The four racing factions, reds, whites, blues, greens, developed intense followings, with fans wearing team colors and rioting over disputed finishes. The Nika riots of 532 killed 30,000 when political tensions erupted at the races. Betting was ubiquitous, with odds tracked on public boards like modern sports books. The star drivers, orgi, earned fortunes comparable to today's Formula One champions, while their dangerous profession, crash helmets hadn't been invented, added morbid fascination. Theater in Rome blended high art and popular entertainment in ways that foreshadowed modern media. While elite patrons sponsored tragedies in the Greek tradition, the masses favored body mime shows and pantomime performances where silent actors danced mythological scenes, an ancient version of interpretive dance. Roman playwrights like Plautus recycled Greek plots with added slapstick and topical humor, much like modern Hollywood adaptations. The theater's architecture also innovated, rotating stages, elaborate scenery, and even primitive special effects using mirrors and pulleys. Public baths, thermae, served as all-purpose leisure complexes that put modern spas to shame. The baths of Caracalla could accommodate 1,600 bathers simultaneously across sprawling gymnasiums, swimming pools, and libraries. Beyond hygiene, they functioned as social hubs where business deals were struck, gossip exchanged, and political alliances forged, ancient equivalents of modern country clubs or networking lounges. The admission fee was deliberately kept low, about 1 as, a small copper coin, to ensure broad accessibility as part of the imperial social contract. The darker aspects of Roman entertainment hold up uncomfortable mirrors to contemporary society. The Colosseum's executions of criminals ad bestias, by beasts, or in reenactments of mythological torments prefigure modern debates about violence as entertainment. The Venetians' animal hunts contributed to ecological devastation, driving species like North African elephants and Syrian lions to regional extinction, an early example of human activity causing biodiversity loss. Even the bread dole system, while alleviating hunger, created dependencies that emperors manipulated for political ends. Rome's entertainment legacy persists in both obvious and subtle forms. Modern stadium designs consciously echo amphitheater layouts, while halftime shows continue the Roman tradition of spectacle interludes. Reality TV shows replicate the voyeuristic appeal of gladiatorial combat without, usually, the mortal danger. Even our vocabulary, arena, literally meaning sand used to absorb blood, carries traces of these ancient pastimes. Perhaps most significantly, Rome demonstrated how entertainment can simultaneously unite and divide, uplift and degrade. A paradox we're still navigating in our own age of streaming platforms and social media. The Roman Empire's architectural legacy represents one of humanity's most enduring physical connections to antiquity, with engineering solutions so innovative they still baffle modern builders. Picture the Pantheon's massive concrete dome, still the world's largest unreinforced concrete span after 1,900 years, where sunlight filters through the oculus to trace celestial patterns across marble floors. Roman concrete's self-healing properties, recently decoded by MIT scientists, came from volcanic ash reactions that formed microscopic crystalline structures when cracks appeared. This ancient material science achievement puts modern brittle concrete to shame, inspiring current research into sustainable alternatives. Urban infrastructure projects combine practicality with imperial grandeur in ways that still define city planning. The Claudian aqueduct delivered 300,000 cubic meters of water daily to Rome through gravity alone, a volume matching modern mid-sized city needs. Underground lead pipes distributed water to public fountains, bathhouses, and even elite homes with pressurized systems. The Cloaca Maxima sewer, large enough to drive a cart through, remains partially functional today, a testament to Roman foresight about sanitation's role in public health. These systems weren't just functional. The Trevi Fountain's modern spectacle continues an ancient tradition where water displays symbolized civic pride. Bridge and road engineering enabled imperial control while creating economic networks. The Alcantara Bridge in Spain, bearing an inscription honoring Trajan, has carried traffic for 1,900 years through floods and wars. Roman roads, built in layers totaling 1 to 1.5 meters deep, followed straight lines across landscapes, with surveying techniques so precise that some modern European highways still trace their routes. The Cursus Publicus courier stations placed every 10 to 15 miles allowed messages to cross the empire at speeds unmatched until railroads, an ancient internet of paved information highways. Domestic architecture reflected social stratification with uncomfortable modern parallels. Elite villas featured underfloor heating, hypocausts, piped water, and mosaic floors depicting intricate scenes. The Hadrian's Villa complex covered 250 acres with artificial lakes and sculpture gardens. Meanwhile, Plebeians crowded into insulae apartment blocks where upper floors lacked running water and fire risks were constant. Rome's first building codes under Augustus responded to collapses that killed hundreds. This divide between luxury and precarity mirrors contemporary housing crises in global cities. Religious and civic architecture projected imperial ideology through calculated symbolism. Temple designs like the Maison Carré and Nîmes perfectly balanced proportions according to Pythagorean ratios, while triumphal arches, like Constantine's, told military victories in sculpted stone comic strips. The Basilica of Maxentius repurposed bathhouse engineering for law courts, creating vast covered spaces that would inspire Christian church designs. Even utilitarian structures like warehouses displayed aesthetic consideration. The Porticus Aemilius rhythmic arches created a beauty and functionality that modern architects still emulate. Military architecture blended defensive pragmatism with psychological intimidation. Hadrian's Wall stretched 73 miles across Britain with mile castles and observation towers. Not just a barrier, but a controlled border crossing system. The Masada siege ramp, built by Jewish slaves under Roman command, remains one of history's most brutal demonstrations of engineering as a weapon. Frontier forts like Vindolanda followed standardized playing card designs that optimized defense while providing soldiers surprising comforts, central heating and bath complexes in remote outposts. Rome's architectural influence transcends mere imitation. The U.S. Capitol and European Parliament buildings consciously echo Roman forms to project democratic continuity. Modern concrete domes from St. Paul's Cathedral to the Pantheon in Paris pay direct homage. Yet perhaps the deeper legacy is conceptual, the Roman understanding that infrastructure shapes society. Their roads moved legions, but also ideas. Their aqueducts brought water, but also public health. Their temples honored gods, but also unified diverse peoples. In an age of crumbling modern infrastructure, Rome's built environment stands as both inspiration and reproach, proof that with sufficient vision and investment, public works can outlast empires by millennia. The Roman Empire's economic system pioneered financial concepts and commercial networks that laid foundations for modern capitalism in ways both impressive and cautionary. Imagine the bustling forum at Ostia where Egyptian grain merchants negotiated contracts with Syrian shipping agents, while bankers calculated exchange rates between gold aurei and silver denarii, a scene resembling today's commodity markets. The societates, early corporations, pooled investor capital for ventures ranging from Spanish mining operations to African olive oil exports, complete with profit-sharing agreements and limited liability clauses that wouldn't become standard again until the Renaissance. Currency and banking systems achieved surprising sophistication. The denarius maintained remarkable stability for centuries. A first-century soldier's pay could purchase similar goods across generations until the 3rd century inflation spiral. Private banks, argentarii, offered loans at interest rates capped by law, 12% maximum, while the fiscus, imperial treasury, managed complex revenue streams from 40-plus provinces. The discovery of wooden writing tablets in London records a first-century loan between Gaulish merchants with compound interest calculations, proof that advanced financial mathematics existed beyond elite circles. Trade networks reached global proportions that wouldn't be matched until early modern times. Roman merchant ships regularly traveled to India, with Tamil language records describing Yavna, Roman, traders bartering gold for pepper and pearls. Chinese silk reached Rome in such quantities that Seneca complained about decadent translucent fabrics, while Roman glassware has been found in Japanese tombs. The scale was staggering. A single Alexandrian grain ship could carry 1,000 tons of wheat, enough to feed 5,000 people for a year. This ancient globalization came with familiar problems. Trade deficits drained Roman silver to India, and domestic industries suffered from cheap provincial competition. Production methods anticipated industrial organization centuries early. The Figlini, brickworks, near Rome used standardized molds allowing interlocking construction. Their stamps reveal corporate ownership, changing hands like modern businesses. Spanish fish sauce factories operated on conveyor belt principles, with successive stages of fermentation in connected tanks. The Army's fabrici, arms factories, produced identical armor parts that could be replaced across units, an early version of interchangeable parts. Yet this proto-industrialization remained constrained by slave labor's availability, reducing incentives for labor-saving innovation. Economic inequality followed patterns that mirror modern disparities. While senators owned continent-spanning latifundia estates worked by thousands of slaves, plebeian farmers struggled under debt burdens. Pompeian graffiti records loans with 40% interest rates, the ancient equivalent of predatory payday lending. The grain dole, while preventing starvation, created dependency. By 1 CE, over 200,000 Roman males received free wheat, comprising perhaps 20% of the city's population. This welfare system stabilized society but also discouraged productive employment, much like modern debates about universal basic income. Rome's economic legacy is profoundly ambivalent. It demonstrated the prosperity possible from integrated markets and standardized systems, yet also showed how inequality and resource depletion can undermine growth. Modern economists see parallels between Rome's reliance on slave labor and today's automation anxieties, between its grain subsidies and welfare state debates. Perhaps most importantly, Rome proved that economic systems can't be separated from their social and environmental contexts, a lesson we're still learning as we confront climate change and technological disruption. The denarius in your pocket as a museum relic carries this warning. No currency, no matter how stable, outlasts the civilization that backs it. The Roman Empire's military evolution presents a case study in organizational adaptation that still informs modern defense strategies. Legionary recruitment posters found in Egypt promised citizenship after 25 years of service, an ancient version of today's military benefits packages. The Vindolanda tablets preserve soldiers' personal letters requesting wool socks and beer shipments, revealing a military bureaucracy as concerned with troop morale as battlefield tactics. This combination of institutional discipline and individual accommodation created a fighting force that maintained imperial borders for centuries against persistent threats. Training methods combined physical conditioning with psychological indoctrination in ways modern boot camps still emulate. Recruits practiced with wooden swords twice the weight of real gladii to build muscle memory, while marching 20 miles in full kit, 60-plus pounds, under all weather conditions forged endurance. The Cantaburnium system, 8-man squads sharing tents and cooking duties, created bonds stronger than modern military units, with archaeological evidence showing soldiers serving alongside childhood friends from their hometowns. Discipline was brutal but calculated. Decimation, executing every 10th man, was rare, but its terror effect maintained order across thousands of miles of frontier. The Roman military-industrial complex pioneered supply systems that dwarfed most pre-modern efforts. Fabrici arms factories across the empire produced standardized equipment. A helmet made in Gaul would fit a soldier in Syria. The Annona Militaris system requisitioned grain, leather, and weapons from provinces with ruthless efficiency. Papyrus records show Egyptian villages fined for missing quotas. Soldiers doubled as engineers, building Hadrian's Wall and frontier roads that served both defensive and economic purposes. This dual-use infrastructure strategy anticipates modern defense policies linking military and economic security. Rome's greatest military innovation may have been its meritocratic promotion system. Unlike most ancient armies where birth determined rank, the legions allowed talent to rise. Vespasian began as a provincial officer before becoming emperor. The Centurionate Corps formed a professional officer class where battlefield bravery trumped social status. Tombstones proudly list soldiers' promotions through the ranks. Even slaves could gain freedom and status through military service, with some becoming officers commanding former masters, a social mobility unheard of in most ancient societies. The late imperial military reforms hold particular relevance for modern asymmetric warfare. As traditional legions proved ineffective against guerrilla raids, Rome created specialized units like the comitatenses, mobile field armies, and limitanei, border militias. Barbarian federati troops served under their own leaders, but with Roman pay, a precursor to modern proxy forces and military contractors. The Notitia Dignitatum, a 5th century military manual, lists exotic units like camel cavalry alongside traditional formations, showing pragmatic adaptation to new threats. Rome's military legacy persists in doctrine and symbolism. The U.S. Marine Corps' eagle, globe, and anchor emblem consciously echoes legionary standards, while NATO's command structures borrow from Roman organizational principles. Modern armies still study Caesar's siege tactics and Hadrian's border security strategies. More profoundly, Rome demonstrated both the strengths of professional standing armies and their dangers when loyalty shifts from state to commanders, a lesson relevant to every modern nation grappling with civil-military relations. Perhaps most remarkably, the Roman military became an engine of cultural assimilation. Veterans colonies from York to Damascus spread Roman lifestyles through example rather than coercion. Auxiliary troops who gained citizenship often became the empire's most ardent defenders, a lesson in how inclusive service policies can build loyalty. In an era when modern militaries struggle with diversity and integration, Rome's experience offers both inspiration and caution about armed forces as tools of social engineering. The Roman Empire's collapse in the West presents a slow-motion unraveling that modern scholars continue to debate with increasing urgency. Imagine the confusion in Rome's streets when news arrived in 410 CE that Alaric's Visigoths had breached the city walls, the first foreign sack in 800 years. Yet this dramatic event was merely one symptom of deeper systemic failures that had been accumulating for generations. The empire didn't so much fall as fragment. With different regions experiencing decline at varying paces, Britain collapsed into chaos within decades while Italy maintained Roman institutions under Gothic rule for another century. Economic factors played a crucial but often overlooked role in Rome's demise. The 3rd century currency crisis saw the silver denarius degrade to barely 5% precious metal content. Ancient inflation so severe that Diocletian's price control edict listed punishments for merchants exceeding maximum prices. Tax collection became increasingly predatory, with imperial agents seizing crops from starving farmers to supply distant armies. Archaeological evidence shows villas in Gaul and Britain becoming self-sufficient fortresses as long-distance trade networks failed, a process scholars now call ruralization that reversed centuries of urban-centered development. Military overextension created vulnerabilities that resonate with modern geopolitics. The empire's 5,000-mile borders required 300,000 soldiers to garrison, a troop density of just 60 per mile that left vast stretches undefended. As barbarian pressures increased, Rome resorted to short-term fixes with long-term consequences, settling Germanic tribes inside the empire as federati, allied troops, who maintained their own laws and leaders. This policy of accommodation, while pragmatically necessary, gradually transformed the empire's cultural and political fabric from within. Climate science now reveals environmental stresses compounding Rome's troubles. Tree-ring data from the Alps shows severe droughts during the crisis of the 3rd century, while ice cores from Greenland record lead pollution declines matching Rome's economic contractions. The late antique Little Ice Age, 536 to 660 CE, brought volcanic winters and failed harvests that pushed the weakened empire past breaking point. These findings suggest Rome fell not to barbarians alone, but to a perfect storm of interconnected pressures, much like the polycrisis scenarios modern analysts fear today. The psychological impact of decline shaped responses in ways that feel hauntingly familiar. Elite Romans increasingly turned to nostalgia and conspiracy theories. Some blamed Christianity for abandoning traditional gods. Others targeted corrupting foreign influences. Salvian of Marseille's writings lament moral decay, much like modern cultural critics, while Augustine's City of God sought meaning in collapse, like today's post-apocalyptic fiction. This parallel suggests that civilizations in decline often fixate on cultural rather than structural explanations for their predicament. Rome's eastern half survived as Byzantium for another millennium by making difficult adaptations, smaller borders, Greek identity, Christian unity that the West couldn't match. This divergence offers a sobering lesson. Collapse isn't inevitable for all parts of a system, but transformation is unavoidable. Modern parallels abound, from debates about American decline to the EU's struggles with unity versus sovereignty. Rome's experience suggests that empires don't end with a bang, but through 1,000 compromises, each logical in isolation, collectively transformative. Perhaps Rome's most valuable lesson is that civilizations are ecosystems, not machines. They can't be fixed with silver bullet solutions, but require constant rebalancing of economic, environmental, military, and cultural factors. The Romans themselves barely understood the complex system they created. How could they, when even with modern tools we're still piecing together why it failed? In an age of climate change, pandemics, and geopolitical shifts, Rome's decline offers no easy answers, but provides the most long-term case study we have for how complex societies unravel and how some parts sometimes endure. The Roman Empire's afterlife in historical memory reveals as much about successive generations as it does about antiquity itself. Renaissance humanists pored over crumbling manuscripts, convinced that reviving Latin purity could restore Rome's glory, unaware they were reading copies made by medieval monks who had silently corrected the texts. Napoleon staged his imperial coronation as a deliberate reenactment of Roman ceremony, commissioning a cameo that depicted him as a Roman emperor, though the artist had to explain the symbolism to him. These layers of interpretation and misunderstanding form a palimpsest where each era projects its own anxieties and aspirations onto the Roman past. Archaeological rediscoveries have repeatedly reshaped our understanding of Roman civilization. Pompeii's initial excavation in 1748 sparked neoclassical revivals across Europe, though early diggers discarded ordinary artifacts to prize marble statues, much like modern social media privileging spectacular finds over mundane truths. The 19th century's railroad expansion accidentally uncovered countless Roman sites, their straight tracks often following ancient roads. Today, ground-penetrating radar reveals entire buried cities without moving a shovel of earth, while chemical analysis of concrete samples uncovers lost recipes that could revolutionize modern construction. The academic study of Rome has undergone several revolutions that mirror broader intellectual trends. Edward Gibbon's Decline and Fall, 1776, framed Rome through Enlightenment ideals of rational governance, while Victorian scholars emphasized moral decay narratives that justified British imperialism. The 20th century's Marxist historians recast Rome as a class struggle between patricians and plebeians, followed by late-century focus on marginalized groups: women, slaves, provincials. Current scholarship increasingly examines Rome through ecological lenses, asking how climate and disease shaped imperial fortunes, a reflection of our own environmental anxieties. Popular culture's Rome veers between nostalgic idealization and sensationalized excess. Ben-Hur, 1959, presented a theologically sanitized Rome where Christian virtue triumphs, while Gladiator, 2000, offered a grittier vision that still took liberties with historical facts. Video games like Total War, Rome allow players to fix Rome's mistakes through gameplay, an interactive form of historical wish fulfillment. This tension between accuracy and entertainment echoes Roman historians themselves, who often prioritized moral lessons over factual precision. The political appropriation of Roman imagery continues to shape modern ideologies. Mussolini's fascists obsessively mimicked Roman symbols while ignoring the Republic's democratic elements. America's founding fathers consciously adopted Roman constitutional models but rejected imperial ambitions. The European Union uses Latin mottos, in varietate concordia, while avoiding direct visual references to empire, a delicate dance around Rome's complex legacy. These selective interpretations demonstrate how historical memory serves present-day needs rather than objective truth. Digital technology is creating new forms of engagement with ancient Rome. Virtual reality reconstructions allow walking through meticulously rendered forums and villas, though they risk replacing scholarly nuance with sensory spectacle. Wikipedia's Roman history articles receive millions of monthly views, their edit wars revealing ongoing debates about imperial legacy. Even TikTok hosts Latin teachers and archaeological explainers, though algorithmic promotion favors gladiator myths over bureaucratic realities. This democratization of knowledge brings both opportunities and distortions. Rome's ultimate lesson may be that civilizations never truly die. They transform into ideas that future generations reinterpret. The Roman Forum exists today both as crumbling stones and as a concept shaping civic spaces worldwide. Latin survives both in Vatican ceremonies and in scientific terminology. Perhaps what makes Rome eternal isn't its physical remnants, but its endless adaptability to new contexts, a mirror reflecting back whatever values we most wish to see in ourselves, for better or worse. The Roman Empire's linguistic legacy represents one of its most pervasive yet underappreciated contributions to modern civilization. Latin's evolution from a regional Italic tongue to the lingua franca of Western Europe created linguistic DNA that still structures our thought processes today. Consider how medical students memorize terms like flexor carpi radialis, precise Latin descriptors that would have made sense to a Roman physician. Legal phrases like habeas corpus and pro bono maintain ancient terminology in modern courtrooms, while scientific binomial nomenclature ensures a global botanist can identify Quercus robur as English oak just as a first-century herbalist might have. The Romance languages, Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, are essentially evolved dialects of Vulgar Latin, their grammar and core vocabulary preserving ancient structures like linguistic fossils. Spanish, mucho, and French, muchwire, both descend from Latin mucere, to blow one's nose, revealing unexpected connections through sound shifts. The split between written classical Latin and spoken vernaculars foreshadowed modern diglossia situations where formal and informal language variants coexist. Think of modern Standard Arabic versus regional dialects. Latin's role as a sacred language created unique preservation dynamics. The Catholic Church's continued use of Latin meant medieval monks copied classical texts that might otherwise have been lost, even as they Christianized content. Renaissance humanist attempts to purify Latin ironically fossilized it as a dead language, while vernacular tongues continued evolving. Today's Living Latin movement, with spoken conferences and YouTube tutorials, attempts to bridge this artificial divide, reconstructing how the language might have sounded in forum debates or legionary barracks. Technical and academic vocabularies remain deeply Latinized. Over 80% of English multisyllabic words derive from Latin, often through French intermediaries. Computer terms like memory, from memoria, and data, plural of datum, carry ancient concepts into digital age. The periodic table's element names, from aurum, O for gold, to plumbum, Pb, for lead, preserve Roman alchemy. Even modern military terminology retains Latin roots. Infantry from infantum, youth, strategy from strategema, Greek via Latin, reflecting Rome's martial legacy. The Roman approach to multilingualism offers lessons for today's globalized world. Educated Romans were often bilingual in Greek and Latin, while provincial subjects maintained local tongues, a linguistic hierarchy paralleling English's modern global dominance. Roman soldiers' graffiti at Hadrian's Wall mixes Latin with Celtic words, showing organic code switching. The empire's translation projects, rendering Hebrew scriptures into Greek and Latin, created the first multicultural textual traditions, setting precedents for cross-cultural knowledge transfer. Latin's afterlife and education reflects shifting cultural priorities. Medieval trivium made Latin grammar the foundation of learning, while Victorian public schools used Latin drills as mental discipline. Today's debates about Latin's curricular value, promoting logical thinking versus being elitist deadweight, mirror broader tensions between tradition and utility. The rise of spoken Latin pedagogy marks a radical return to viewing Latin as a means of communication rather than just textual analysis. Perhaps most remarkably, Latin endures as a conceptual toolkit. Legal maxims like caveat emptor, buyer beware, distill ancient wisdom into modern business practices. Medical Latin provides precise terminology transcending national languages. Even the Vatican's Latin tweets at pontifex_LN demonstrate how an ancient language can serve cutting-edge communication. In this sense, Latin isn't dead, it's frozen in amber, preserving Roman thought patterns that continue to shape our intellectual landscape in ways both obvious and subtle. The Roman Empire's calendar and timekeeping systems created temporal frameworks that still structure our modern experience of days, months, and years in profound ways. Our month names, July honoring Julius Caesar, August for Augustus, preserve ancient political propaganda in daily speech, while September through December cling to their original Latin numerical positions despite calendar reforms that rendered the names inaccurate. The 7-day week, adapted from Babylonian tradition via Rome, carries planetary names in Romance languages, Italian Mercoledì, Mercury's Day, and French Dimanche, Sun's Day, echo Roman cosmology even as their meanings fade from common awareness. Roman conceptions of daily time reveal both familiarity and strangeness. They divided daylight into 12 equal ori, meaning winter hours were shorter than summer ones in northern latitudes. Sundials and water clocks measured these flexible hours, with wealthy households employing slaves as timekeepers to announce the passing periods. The military used more precise night watches, vigiliae, divided into 4 equal shifts, a system that influenced medieval timekeeping. This fluid approach to time feels alien in our standardized world, yet the Roman emphasis on punctuality for business and civic affairs would feel thoroughly modern. The Julian calendar reform of 46 BCE demonstrated Rome's administrative genius and its willingness to impose order on nature. To realign the calendar with solar seasons, that year of confusion lasted 445 days, the longest year in recorded history. The new 365.25-day system remains so accurate that it persisted for 1,600 years until the Gregorian refinement. Modern astronomers still use Julian dates for celestial calculations, while Orthodox churches adhere to the old calendar for religious observances, testaments to Rome's enduring chronological influence. Religious festivals and civic commemorations created rhythms that shaped Roman consciousness. The Lupercalia's fertility rites in February evolved into Valentine's traditions, while Saturnalia's December role reversals and gift-giving prefigure Christmas customs. Victory anniversaries like August 1st for Cleopatra's defeat became permanent fixtures in the imperial calendar, much like modern national holidays. Even the concept of marking years, AUC, from Rome's founding, persists in Japan's era system and academic Common Era designations. Time's measurement became a tool of imperial control. Milestone markers on Roman roads counted distances to the capital, reinforcing psychological connections to the center. Official documents dated by consular years asserted Roman authority across provinces. The very word calendar comes from calendy, the monthly debt-reckoning day when interest was due, a reminder of time's economic dimension. This institutionalization of time created shared reference points that helped unify a vast empire, much like standardized time zones enable modern globalization. The legacy of Roman timekeeping is profoundly ambivalent. On one hand, their systems enabled unprecedented coordination across continents. A letter could specify meeting on the Ides of Aprilis during the 3rd hour from Syria to Britain. Yet this precision also facilitated exploitation. Mining operations ran slaves in continuous shifts, and military discipline demanded synchronized maneuvers. The dark side of temporal organization reminds us that measuring time isn't neutral. It's a form of power that determines whose time matters. Modern technology has transformed but not erased these Roman foundations. Digital clocks still display 12-hour cycles derived from Roman numerals. Project management software uses Gantt charts that conceptually descend from Roman engineering timelines. Even our compulsive time tracking, fitness monitors counting steps, apps logging screen time, echoes the Roman obsession with quantifying life into measurable units. As we navigate an era of climate change and geological timescales, Rome's temporal legacy challenges us to consider who controls time shapes civilization itself. The Roman Empire's approach to public health and medicine created systems that blended remarkable innovation with enduring superstition, leaving legacies that still influence modern healthcare. Picture the valetudinarium of a Roman military fortress, its wards separated by function, surgical instruments sterilized in boiling vinegar, and herbal painkillers administered with dosage precision. This level of medical organization wouldn't be matched again until the 19th century, yet the same doctors might prescribe mummied dust, ground Egyptian remains, as a cure for epilepsy or wear amulets against miasmatic air. Roman medical theory, largely borrowed from Greek pioneers like Hippocrates and Galen, established concepts that persisted stubbornly. The humoral theory, balancing blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, dominated Western medicine for 1,500 years and still lingers in phrases like good-humored. Surgical tools excavated at Pompeii and elsewhere show astonishing sophistication. Bone drills with safety guards to prevent brain penetration, speculums for gynecological exams, and even early cataract needles. Yet these technical advances coexisted with beliefs that womb movement caused hysteria or that garlic could ward off evil spirits. Public health infrastructure represented Rome's most enduring medical contribution. Aqueducts delivering clean water and extensive sewer systems reduced waterborne diseases dramatically. Life expectancy in Roman cities actually exceeded medieval levels. The Cloaca Maxima's basic design inspired modern wastewater management, while public baths promoted hygiene, though communal soaking sometimes spread infections. Rome even had early forms of zoning, burying the dead outside city walls and locating tanneries downstream, that recognized environmental health factors. Military medicine set standards for organized care. Legionary medics followed strict protocols, wound irrigation with acetum, medicinal vinegar, traction for setting bones, and opium for pain management. Field hospitals near battle zones reduced mortality rates significantly. Archaeological evidence shows many soldiers surviving brutal injuries that would have been fatal in earlier eras. The Roman army's emphasis on camp sanitation and clean water anticipated modern military medicine's preventive focus. The medical profession developed hierarchies and specializations familiar today. At the top were elite Greek-trained physicians like Galen, who served emperors and wrote influential texts. Beneath them worked military doctors, then local practitioners using folk remedies. Women served as midwives and herbalists, though male physicians increasingly marginalized them, a gender dynamic that echoes in modern medicine's historical exclusion of women. Medical licensing began under the Empire, with penalties for unqualified practitioners causing harm, an early version of malpractice regulation. Rome's medical legacy persists in both substance and symbolism. The caduceus, winged staff with snakes, remains a medical icon despite its origins as a messenger's symbol. Latin still provides medical terminology that transcends language barriers. More profoundly, Rome demonstrated that public health requires infrastructure investment, a lesson painfully relearned during pandemics when sanitation systems falter. Yet their experience also warns against overconfidence. Even advanced Roman medicine couldn't prevent the Antonine Plague's devastation when new pathogens emerged. As modern medicine grapples with antibiotic resistance and health inequities, Roman approaches gain new relevance. Their emphasis on holistic balance finds echoes in integrative medicine. Herbal remedies they used, like willow bark, natural aspirin, inform modern drug discovery. Most importantly, Rome showed that effective healthcare combines scientific observation with public policy, a duality we're still balancing today between high-tech hospitals and community health initiatives. In this light, the Roman physician's black bag contained not just tools, but the seeds of our ongoing medical dilemmas and aspirations.